Use the word Tilly. And hi again, everybody. Alongside Evan Giddings, it's Dan Devone. Welcome in to Warriors This Week. And what a week it was. We'll get into Steph Curry's huge performance. Is this a carryover into tonight when they take on the Memphis Grizzlies? But Ev, I don't know if this qualifies as breaking news, but the on-again, off-again scenario concerning one Jimmy Butler is apparently off again. What's up?
What's going on, man? Good to see you.
How was New Year's?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was funny because I was inspired by the show that you were doing. Look, we're going to get to Jimmy Butler and the Dubs and all the rest, but I got to catch up with you because I was listening to you guys' show on New Year's Eve, and I was listening to you guys, particularly yourself, tell some stories about those fantastic city nights that Devone used to have and running around the Marina Inn and plopping down at Balboa's Cafe at 8 p.m. until... And so I'm thinking, I got to live something like this, and I had my own version of it in the Mission, so had a really good night. And then the next day, actually, I drove up to Sacramento to see a bunch of college teammates of mine because one of them is in PR for the Sixers, who is in town to play SAC. I couldn't go to the Warriors game on Thursday because I had a St. Mary's broadcast, but I saw him in SAC. I saw a bunch of buddies in Sacramento, and I got a preview of what apparently was like the Warriors game of the year when they went and just kicked the Sixers' ass.
Yeah, no, I think I filled in for you that night talking about the postgame show. So, yeah, it was a remarkable performance on the part of Steph Curry. But I'm like you, I know some guys from Philly, and they just said Philadelphia uses that. And this is sort of, I guess, applicable to the Warriors and maybe a lot of teams in the NBA. That back-to-back, because they had Sacramento and then they had the Warriors the next night.
Yeah.
The Philly guys that I know really believe that that's a built-in excuse. And sort of like, old school NBA going back to the Magics, or even not that far back. The back-to-backs are just, it's not as big of a thing as we like to make it out to these days. And with load management and catering to today's players, it's like, yeah, it's a back-to-back, but come on. It doesn't mean that you need to get run like that. So I think it was a combination that Philadelphia was just really bad defensively. And then the Warriors you could clearly see that the energy was back.
Well, I kind of buy the back-to-back thing being an issue, but primarily for older players. Like, I don't think Paul George looked as good as he did against Sacramento as he did against Golden State. I think Maxey played like 38 minutes the night before and then didn't play as much because they were getting their ass kicked. But the guy who it doesn't apply to is Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid didn't play the night before. So that's where I can see your boys in Philly or just Philly fans in general, like, honestly, and you can take victory laps all day if you want, Devone, because I am with you. I really like Paul George, but I don't think that he'd make the Warriors any better at this point. And at least for what they would have had to give up for him, I'm not sure that he is the guy that puts them in a better position to succeed because he doesn't impact Philly enough even when he does play. And some of it might also be Embiid, but you can see like that team runs through Maxey. Like that, a lot of the teams actually, that's what hit me during that game that I was watching between the Kings and the Sixers. It's like in the fourth quarter, and Embiid's not on the floor, but Sacramento's throwing the ball to De'Aaron Fox. Philly's throwing the ball to Tyrese Maxey. I'm watching last night New York OKC, which was a really good game.
Yeah.
You're throwing the ball to SGA, and you're throwing the ball to Jalen Brunson. Like, you have your guy. But those players are a little younger. They're quicker. They're fresh down the stretch of the fourth quarter, even though Tibbs plays his guys like 48 minutes. That's just the lay of the land in the NBA right now. And so, even though Joel Embiid was back, it was like, well, your real guy, like your driving force, like Maxey, like he had nothing that night. And if you don't have your dude going off, which Curry did, which was a big reason the Warriors won.
Yeah, it's a young man's game. I always say this.
Yeah.
What's Maxey, 24, I want to say? I mean, he's a kid.
He was the same class as Jordan Poole. I can't remember if he's the same
24,
age. Yeah.
Around there. And that's just where the game's at right now. It's all about these youngsters. Joel Embiid had a big night, but, I mean, if you watch the game, he's just...
I couldn't believe he had 28 and 15.
I know. But defensively, because I was reading or I was listening to Slater, might have been on 95.7 The Game, and he was talking about how Steve Kerr now he's slimmed down the rotation now, or he's got it to 8 or 9 guys, depending when GP2 and Podziemski come back. But one of the things that he has to sort of deal with is that now that he has, Looney and Kyle Anderson on the outside looking in, and he doesn't want to move those guys in and out of the rotation and thus mess with Jonathan Kuminga's minutes and disrupt all of this sort of flow that they've developed. But when Joel Embiid comes to town, it's like, God, I got Kevon Looney here. Shouldn't I bring him in and match big with big? But what he found out after the game is that the worst thing you can do is bring in a Kevon Looney for a Joel Embiid, because if you go small, what we found out is Embiid just doesn't have the knees to get outside anymore or go against smaller defenders, albeit a Trace Jackson Davis. But he can't get out on the perimeter any longer. His fluidity in his game was just completely gone, man.
No, you can tell, but when Embiid is right, and I don't think he's 100% by any means, like he's played 12 of the 31 games, so clearly he's playing himself back into shape. But like you can tell that when he's playing between the restricted areas, he's right. But he was playing between the 3-point line, and a lot of it was because the Warriors were just basically bringing him out high and putting him in different switches and trying to make him guard. But like, if you just go back and watch, and YouTube will put out 10-minute clips and highlights of every single NBA game. If you just go watch the highlights of that game, the amount of times the Warriors would drive to the paint and Embiid would be at the 3-point line, it's like, dude, that can't happen. Yeah. Like you're a 7-footer, you're the anchor, and I realize he's not an all-time defender, but he's a pretty damn good one when he's 100%. So the Sixers are basically, they made their bed with him, and that's why I think the Warriors have maintained the sort of flexibility that they've tried to around either injury-prone or all-star, older type players. They are trying to be very careful as to which one they cash their chips in on, because even let's say they could go out and get a Joel Embiid, if you can't expect him to be on the floor, that's great that you just got an MVP and he can fit with Steph and all this thing, and it's a hypothetical, but it's like that's someone that you have to at least feel confident that is going to be available, and he really just hasn't been for the Sixers. Yeah, and just to wrap up the 76ers for you Philly fans out there, it's just all health with them. Yeah. If those three guys are on the floor, I think they can be a good basketball team. I really do. And Paul George, I think, is going to get much better, but it's just how reliant can you be on George and Embiid at this point? I do want to switch gears and talk a little Jimmy Butler. Can you update the folks at home on what's going on with Butler, the latest? Well, so the Butler saga has been going on, I think, probably since the summer, since the Heat didn't... End of last year, if you think about it. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, because Jimmy Butler's wanted a new contract from the Miami Heat for some time. And I think there might have even been like a 2 for 110 deal that he turned down because he wanted, like the Paul George deal. Paul George got 4 years, I think the max from Philly in free agency. Jimmy Butler wanted something like that. Pat Riley says no. So Butler ends up not playing in their playoff loss last year and basically said that he would have won, the Miami Heat would have won the series if he played. And Pat Riley was like, well, shut up and play then. So that causes some strife. They don't give him the contract. Then his name starts getting connected to Golden State this summer. And he was one of the guys that we kicked around and have continued to kick around. The Paul Georges, the Markkanens. I always liked Jimmy Butler, but it's pretty much come to a head with him in Miami because 2 nights ago, I forget who they were playing, but Jimmy Butler has like just a terrible night. 25 points or 25 minutes, minus 27, and Miami Heat lose. He goes to the podium and essentially says, trade me. I mean, Carter's got the sound. All right, here's what Jimmy Butler said. I'll let him speak for himself.
What do I want to see happen? I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball. And wherever that may be, we'll find out here pretty soon. But I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here off the court, but I want to be back to somewhat dominant. I want to hoop, and I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Yeah, so that last part is like, dude, I'm out. I'm sick of this place. And that's the guy that is now available for trade. Although weirdly, all right, the Miami Heat are a little dirty. I'm not going to lie, because they tried to suspend him for 7 games. Yeah. 7 games. Well, they did, didn't they? Well, I think the Players Association is fighting it because it's honestly, I don't know how you feel about it, but it seems bullcrap to me. They are suspending him 7 games for conduct detrimental to the team, which is basically asking for a trade.
He's still going to have to serve that 7 games, though, because even if they appeal it, that appeal doesn't go through until the 7-game suspension's already up, basically.
Yeah, so Butler's going to be out, and the new news with the Warriors, according to Anthony Slater and Sam Amick of The Athletic, is that, at least for now, they are not interested in a Jimmy Butler trade. And that doesn't necessarily surprise me, but the reasoning behind it, according to Slater, I do think is fascinating. Because, number one, the financials would be very difficult to thread a needle through. Both teams are hard capped at the first apron, and that means they have to get very creative with their trades. But it also means it basically has to include either Andrew Wiggins or Draymond Green. And we kicked this around yesterday. Curious how you feel about it. I think Butler would actually work better with Draymond, and I would be all right if Wiggins got traded out. But according to sources, the Warriors are very high on Andrew Wiggins with how he's played this season, shooting 40% from three, lockdown defense, and they actually like the fit that he is between Curry and Draymond. So that's one reason. The other reason is because if it didn't include Wiggins, or even if it did, it also might include Kuminga. And the Warriors are not out. He's not untouchable. That was specified. But they want to see what they have over this next month for a guy that's now had 6 games and he's averaged 25 points. And then the third reason would be, I guess, the malcontent that Jimmy Butler has been. And the fact that he has gone so public with the frustrations that we just heard has turned the Warriors off a little bit. So how do you read this?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we have to all remind ourselves that this isn't isolated to just Miami. That it
also happened in Minnesota.
It happened in Minnesota. He had issues in Chicago. He's had issues in just about in Philadelphia. He wanted out and called for meetings. He does this sort of thing with just about every single team he's been with. And I do think that you have to take into account guys that quit on teams. Like that is, that's he was playing in games, but he wasn't. And it was to the point where Spo just had to pull him and look at if you're not going to play, just in the last 2 games he played and they pulled him in the fourth quarter because he wasn't doing anything.
That's against Indiana. They got waxed.
You can't do that. But what I also find and I'll get back to your question in a second, but what I also find fascinating is that I do believe Pat Riley when he said that he's not getting traded. I do believe Pat Riley is so old school that he thought if he could just come out with that statement. And I took it hook, line, and sinker. And a lot of people, I was doing shows and they said, do you really believe Riley? And I do believe Riley in his heart of hearts said, that's the end of it. What sort of fascinates me, and maybe Pat Riley needs to get up to speed that what's going on in 2025 as it relates to the NBA and today's modern player, is that guys like Pat Riley and management, they don't control that narrative any longer, Whether it's AD out in New Orleans or it's James Harden, today's player will get to where it is that they want to go. This isn't the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s where Pat Riley would just say, no, this is what's happening. You're staying here. It's the players that run things. The players will demand a trade. And how do they do it? Well, I'll just, I'll be like AD and show up, but I'm not playing. And I'll come up with some fake injury or like James Harden and gain 30 pounds and then lose it when I get traded to the team I want to go to. So it's today's players that really control and dictate that narrative, which I find sort of fascinating. And getting back to the Warriors, I think you know how I feel about Jimmy Butler or one player in terms of improving them.
You love him.
And can't stand it. It's a terrible move. And I think Butler, if it's either Draymond or Wiggins, I'm always leaning towards getting younger. Not that I want Jimmy Butler, but if I had to pick one between the two, I don't want another guy who's going to be 36 years of age to go along with a 36-year-old Draymond and a soon-to-be 37-year-old Steph Curry. So I'm keeping Wiggins, who just turned 30, I believe, and I'm always going to lean towards the younger basketball player. But in the perfect world, I'm not entertaining that trade regardless.
Well, it sounds like the Warriors aren't either. But again, the reason is because they like the fit that Wiggins has brought back this season after a career low year last year. It sounds like they're still wait and see on Kuminga. Not untouchable. Although I don't know about you, Dan. I do not believe that Joe Lacob is going to trade Kuminga. And it might be foolish. It might end up hurting him down the line. But I think if you're Lacob and you're trying to, gauge any sense of marketability for this basketball team in 3 or 4 years that doesn't include Curry playing until he's like 40 or 41, to me, he's really the only option that you have. And so I don't think the Warriors would give up Kuminga unless it's for a true, in his prime, game effector. Like a big name player that's a one, And I don't think there's any of those out there. Even guys that would be good fits for the Warriors, to me, don't really move the needle that much. Jimmy Butler does for me, but I can understand why the Warriors wouldn't want to publicly. Also, this is something, too, that I think is interesting. The fact that they said they weren't interested in him for now. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't be interested in him at the deadline, because his value is plummeting. And this is where Pat Riley does matter in regards to the Warriors. I'm with you. Management, you won't win. Like, you can try and stare down a guy. Now, the only thing that Riley, I think, has shown in his past is that he's willing to hurt his own team to win a battle with a player. And I think Shaquille O'Neal was Exhibit A. But, I mean, Jimmy Butler is eventually going to get out of there, and the Heat can either suffer for it or they can get something back for it. And so his value is plummeting to the point where I realize you don't want to sell low. I realize you don't want to give the player that's been hurting your team, evidently, for the better part of a season and a half. You don't want to give into him. But sometimes you have to just cut bait. And I think that the Heat will be wise to cut bait. And this is where the Warriors might be able to buy low on that kind of player. Now, it would have to include, again, Draymond or Wiggins in all probability. But to me, that the fact that Jimmy Butler's been so toxic might mean that in a trade, you wouldn't have to give up Kuminga, because that's the asset and the player that I'm prioritizing at the deadline.
To your point about Pat Riley and his stare down or showdown with, in this case, Jimmy Butler, there's still the option that if he really, at the end of the day, realizes that Miami is not going anywhere this year, that he just holds on to him and says, go ahead, walk. What are you going to do in your option?
Well, that's the other issue, is that Jimmy Butler has a player option.
Yes.
So he can say, you know what, Pat? That's fine. You don't want me to be around. That's cool. I'm going to opt in.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm going to opt in. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to stick it where it hurts, which is right in the tax, which is right in the first apron. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to collect the check.
Yeah. So it goes back and forth between the two. When you talk about Jimmy Butler on the floor, Jimmy Butler has become a really, I think, good postseason guy. I mean, think about him, those last two runs by Miami against Denver and then in the bubble. Like in the postseason, he's vintage Jimmy Butler. He seems a bit disinterested during the regular season. He sort of checks out. And this is when things were copacetic, if you will, with Miami.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I don't know that the Warriors or anybody like that of the Warriors that is sort of, on the 8 to 10 or 6 through 11 in the seeding of the Western Conference or even of the Eastern Conference, if Jimmy Butler's a fit. I think you got to be one of those teams that's in the conversation of going to your respective conference finals and or the NBA finals. Then Jimmy Butler makes sense. Jimmy Butler makes sense on a team that has an outside chance of winning the NBA championship, because then Jimmy Butler can put it into overdrive and be that guy. I don't know that Jimmy Butler at this age really gives a rip about the regular season, at least his body of work over the last couple of years.
No, but I also think Butler, and again, it doesn't sound like he's available right now, or the Warriors are, I should say, interested in him. That's per Anthony Slater and Sam Amick of The Athletic. But I do think that Butler fits into what the Warriors, to me, are trying to do realistically, which is sneak into the playoffs and make a run. Because where were the Miami Heat when they made the NBA Finals? They lost to Denver, but do you remember what seed they were?
8th?
They were 7th seed.
Okay.
So, I mean, but damn close. And they caught some breaks. But to me, that's the perfect template, what the Heat did a couple of years ago for what the Warriors are trying to do now. I don't think the Warriors are going to be a top 4 seed. So that means you're going to have to catch some breaks. A big reason the Miami Heat got to the finals is because they had to play a Giannis and Chris Middleton-less Bucks team in the first round. They caught them when they were injured. They caught some breaks along the way. The Warriors, I think, if they are to have a chance to win a title or to even, I think, get deep in the playoffs, they're going to have to catch some breaks. And so I think Butler has shown that he can help a lower seed, and that was as a 1. Now, to me, it would be as a 1A or sidekick. He can help that kind of team go deep into the playoffs because, to your point, the regular season doesn't interest him. And that might be my biggest concern, because you got to get to the playoffs before you actually win. But once he's there, he has a proven track record of elevating his game. Like in the regular season, I think he's 18-4 over his career. And that includes some lean years in his first few seasons in Chicago. But when he gets to the postseason, he's like 21 or 22-6. He's one of the few players where his postseason stats go up. And so that's why I would be interested in him. But it sounds like the Warriors are not at this point, and it's because they want to keep what they have as well as their fear of what Jimmy Butler could do to the locker room.
Look, Jonathan Kuminga may not be untouchable according to the Warriors, but he would be if I was the GM when it comes to Jimmy Butler. I'm not. There's no way in hell I'm moving Kuminga for Butler. Wiggins, I would think about it. I'd be more and I don't even want to do this, but if it's a Draymond Green straight up, where I'm losing an aging player and getting another aging, I mean, that's fine.
I actually think that Butler would work really well alongside Dre. And you kind of need him because the one thing that I can't have Jimmy Butler be is the loudest voice in the room. You need another one.
It'd become his team immediately. But I don't think Jimmy Butler is an answer for this basketball team. And it sort of leads us to what I want to get into is what we saw the other night against Philadelphia. Is this a Warrior team now that should entertain somebody like that of a Jimmy Butler and have serious thoughts about a guy who's good in the postseason and sort of put the crosshairs on the second season? Or was that more of an aberration? Where are you at in terms of the levels of concern? Because they were pretty high, I think both of us, and I think we spoke for sort of the Bay Area, that prior to that game, the Warriors were a team that were trending in the wrong direction. Does that one performance after 3 days off, is that enough of an indicator to sort of buy in on where they're at right now?
To buy in? No. I mean, they still have won 5 games in their last 15. But it's a great start to the new year. And I also think it's indicative of the difference that a month can make. And what I mean by that is this. The Warriors played one of the toughest schedules in December. Now, they also had some time off because of the cup that was built in towards the middle of it. So they didn't play as many games. They'll play more games in January, but they also get more games against lesser opponents. So do I think that the Warriors are all of a sudden back and looking to be the 12-3 team that they were to start the year? Well, if they play Philly every night, they might. And they're going to get some Phillies. They're going to play the Pistons. They're going to get Indy again, who I think is beatable. They're going to play Washington. They're going to play some bad teams or some average teams that are in their league, as opposed to a team like they play tonight in Memphis, who might be missing Jaw. Is out with an AC joint. But even then, that's a really tough team. And Curry's not playing tonight because I don't think he's going to play any back-to-backs the rest of the year. So Curry's out. You might lose tonight, but then Sacramento's a gettable opponent tomorrow. They've been reeling. You're not playing the Denvers, the Phoenixes, who they managed to beat, but the Clippers, even the Lakers to some extent. You're not playing a lot of top-flight, particularly Western Conference teams in this month of January. So do I think that I'm all the way back in? Not necessarily, but they had to have that performance. That's what I'll give them.
I don't think it's as much on the opponents as it is just taking care of your own house. Like, you can beat anybody if you're right.
Well, if you shoot 60% from 3, you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, well, early on in the season, I would have put them, when they were in that stretch, they could have played with anybody in the NBA. And so it's not so much of strength or weakness of schedule is what it is. We saw the other night, the ball movement, the energy, which was just jumping off the screen at me. It was just like, wow, where'd this come from? Is that something that, that they can carry going forward? Is that something that travels? Is that something that can carry over to the next game? Or was that just an outlier? Is that just one of those we had, it's a new year and we had 3 days off and we're rejuvenated, and for whatever reason, the stars were aligned and we feel like, turning back the clock and having the ball movement and being the Warriors of yesteryear, or at least in the beginning of the season. I still have a lot of question marks. And the more I see Jonathan Kuminga, first of all, a couple of things jump out at me. And Steve Kerr, I think, has not handled this well. I mean, the fact that obviously Jonathan Kuminga should have played a lot more and been in the rotation, the fact that he continued to yo-yo him in and out. And it doesn't matter whether he's in the starting lineup or at one point he supplanted Draymond Green, but it's the minutes. And the fact that, he would get 15 minutes and then he'd get 30 minutes, and there wasn't that, going on year 4, that commitment to Jonathan Kuminga of like, okay, let's just let you play through your mistakes. That we continue to, I thought maybe we eradicated that and addressed it last year, but to see more of the same this year, I think that Steve Kerr, and this doesn't happen very often because I'm a Kerr fan, but I think he's been proven wrong the way he's handled Jonathan Kuminga up to this point. I think he should have been leaning in on the kid right from the outset because there's always been this tease. And we saw it last year. We've seen it throughout times this year. And so just now we're beginning to see that there's this commitment to Jonathan Kuminga that now we've pared down the rotation and Jonathan Kuminga is going to be playing upwards to 30 to 35 minutes a game. That should have happened a lot sooner in my estimation.
Perhaps, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but I would push back on it just because I believe, I talked about this with Steiny yesterday, I think that if a player comes into their own, timing does matter, and you'd like this a lot sooner, obviously, but like if Kuminga averages 25 points per game and plays 30 minutes the rest of the season, are you going to say that they dealt with him poorly? I mean, because it looks like he's here to stay, and that's not going to change.
I would say, how come we didn't get this earlier?
Because he wasn't ready yet.
But the only way we can find out if he's ready if you make that commitment. And I think that a couple of mistakes during a game or a bad game is not, especially when a kid's 22 and you don't have anybody who can score the basketball or at least get points the way he does, and that's creating on his own, that I think the lean-in should have been a lot sooner.
Well, I think, and we could talk about this on the other side too because we got to hit a break, but I also think results matter. And that's, to me, what's encouraging about Kuminga. The results, not just about him, but particularly the team.
Hey, I got a name for you. It's going to blow you away.
Okay, is this another white boy of the week or what?
No. Come on. Why do we want to go there? Right?
No, that pissed people off last time.
I got a name for you that's I'm reconsidering as potentially somebody that the Warriors should entertain.
Oh, for a trade?
Yeah.
You want to give it to me on the other side?
Well, yeah, it's called a tease, man.
Oh, well, you asked me like I was going to guess right now before the break, so I just want to make sure that people are locked in.
Locked in. All right. We'll be back. My man, Evan Giddings in 2025. Any resolutions, by the way?
Oh, no. Same year, same me.
Back with more after this.
back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
It's Evan Giddings. It's Dan Avone. It's Carter Chickering, and it's pasta risotto in the back, throwing up levers or I don't know, whatever the hell it is that he's doing. Gotta keep an eye on that guy. He's from Reardon. He's just, he's creating havoc.
I can tell you what, as a producer myself, a lot happens in that booth that you wouldn't think. There's a lot of action that goes down behind that glass.
In what regard?
Well, I can't really tell you because you're not a part of the fraternity that is producers.
It's a tight brethren group over there, a solid sort of fortress of producers. I mean, Carter never makes sense because he looks like, at 6'9", 275.
Well, I was happy to see him today. I didn't know he was in. So the fact that Carter's in, it brings a different dynamic.
Whenever he wants. It's all of a sudden, it's like a Sasquatch sighting. It's like, oh, there he goes.
Well, Lucas kind of builds a schedule, our director of sports, and so, as one might imagine, the non-organization has been running rampant lately.
Speaking of Sasquatch, did you hear about the two guys that
Excuse me?
Sasquatch? Are you familiar with Bigfoot?
Sasquatch?
Sasquatch?
Yeah, sure.
Bigfoot. The legend of in the Northeast, because there's people that still... In fact, there's signs in the Pacific Northeast and trails outside of Portland and in the hills of Oregon where it's like, if you see Bigfoot, please, whatever, turn and move rapidly or don't. It's kind of like, like they have coyote warnings here in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that with Bigfoot. But two guys just over the New Year's break died of hypothermia hunting Bigfoot.
You know what? I'm not going to say they had it coming.
I know. I was like, I'm typically morally like, wow, that sucks. But I'm like, come on, man. Either you were going to die that way or you're going to get run over by your own car in the driveway. You're not very smart people.
Or if I'm going to take it that far, if you legitimately believe in Bigfoot, and that's to each their own, but if they actually believe that they were going to find Bigfoot, what did you think was going to happen? You're just going to take a picture with him and a selfie and go right off into the sunset? No, I'm exactly. I'm more of a chupacabra guy, though. The goat sucker.
Sure. All
yeah.
Right. Loch Ness Monster at all?
I'll go look for the chupacabra next time I'm down south by the border.
Yeah, that's sort of like a Tijuana legend, no?
Yeah. Tijuana, I think Texas. But yeah, this idea of I don't know. It's a goat sucker, a guy who drinks the blood, or an animal that drinks the blood of livestock. I saw they made a Scooby-Doo movie about it. The chupacabra.
That's your reference. Okay.
Well, I love Scooby-Doo, but apparently in Puerto Rico, I'm reading right now, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the first wave of alleged sightings. That's where the chupacabra occurred, and then now it's spread to Latin America, southwestern United States, and some people believe in this supernatural creature, a la Bigfoot.
Well, are you familiar with the X-Files? Way before your time. David Duchovny. It was a popular show on Fox. In fact, I used to do a newscast right after the X-Files, and they used to do crazy numbers that we used to just feed off of. But thank you. Oh, man, that's good producing.
That theme song is all time. I always confused it with Alias, though, because I thought Jennifer Garner was in X-Files for the longest, but turns out I was wrong.
So the X-Files did a couple of episodes on La Cucha. I got to be careful because
La Chupacabra.
Yeah, there's a word in Espanol that is very similar to that for those of you that speak Spanish, that I almost went down a very dark road that thankfully I caught myself. So I'm going to just stay away and speak my Spanglish.
Your Spanglish, yeah,
and get back into.
Maybe we should talk about the Warriors.
Yeah, how about Moses Moody?
Supernatural. Moses Moody. What about him?
Well, I just saw somebody in the text line. Moody is another player they should play more. Yeah, Moses Moody is like, well, they extended the guy, and then I want to say he's hit 7 of his last 9 threes. He was perfect from three land the other day with 3 of 3. God, his stroke looks good, and I like when he's hitting his 3. He just looks like wow. Who is this 6'6" swing guy that doesn't play for the Golden State Warriors?
That doesn't play.
I mean, it's just I go back and forth. Like, where is he? Why is he buried in Kerr's doghouse? But then again, speaking of the supernatural, I'll never be able to unlock that box.
No, well, I think he's a guy that is going to get some more playing time, and the reason is less about Moses Moody than it is Buddy Hield, because Buddy Hield can't throw a rock into the ocean right now.
Oh, and I got a word for you for Buddy Hield. Can we now call him by his real name?
Buddy Buckets?
No, Chavano.
Is that another Spanish word?
This is his name.
His name? It's Bahamian, right?
He's from the Bahamas, yes.
Yeah.
It's one of the best names, and I don't know why he succumbed to Buddy. Like, I know he went to Oklahoma. Did it happen in Oklahoma one day where somebody said, hey, Buddy, you look like a Buddy? No, I'm Chavano Rainier, which is one of the all-time names. So from now on this show, Evan Giddings, I'm making the declaration that if we talk about this young man, it's Chavano Healed. Either way, he can't shoot worth a lick, Buddy or Chavano.
Well, not right now. You know him. Do you know that he and Moses Moody are shooting the same percentage from three-point range?
Really?
Yeah. Even as Buddy has failed to hit a single three-pointer, it feels like, in the last month and a half, he's still shooting 39%, which is where Moses Moody is.
Because he started at like 55.
Yeah, and Moses Moody also started at like 28. So both of them are rising and falling. But I think that Moody's somebody I go back and forth on because I think I really like the guy, and I think he's a good player. But it's hard to differentiate yourself on this team. I think the Warriors are devoid of three-point shooting, and if Moses Moody is hitting shots, he's got to play. But the thing about the Warriors now, and to bring it into the kind of the Jimmy conversation, where they need to go, what they need to address, Dan's got a name for us coming up in a little bit as far as a trade target for the Warriors. But I think the issue with Moses now is that Kerr's starting to shrink his rotation. What we've seen over the last 4 or 5 games is that he's trying to prioritize like 9 guys. Like if you notice, Kyle Anderson doesn't play anymore.
Yeah.
Kevon Looney doesn't play anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think those guys have been terrible this year. But clearly the 13-man rotation is dead. And it might get a little bigger when Pods and GP2 are healthy again. But I would like to see Kerr continue to play the same way, which is like, give me my 9 best guys. And on a night like tonight, it's a little different. Curry's not going to play. Draymond might not play. But if I have my full cast of characters, like, give me my 9 best dudes and match up against their 9 best, and let's see who wins. Because that's how the NBA is played. Your best versus my best.
So when Podziemski comes back, who gets bumped? Lindy?
Yeah.
And what are you doing with GP2? Like, would you agree that you can't mess with Kuminga's minutes?
Yes, yeah. Kuminga can't be touched. But I think that the guy who actually would help me keep GP2 out of the rotation is Schroeder. Because I think, like, GP2 is a better defender, and Schroeder's better offensively. But Schroeder's pesky enough as a defender that they're both relatively small. I mean, GP2 is different because he plays more of a forward spot. But both of them haven't shot very well. And I think Schroeder has at least the offensive upside to stick around and play for more minutes. So he actually might make GP2 expendable to the point where that's whether, and not Looney because of his position, but like GP2 is a contract I'm trying to move at the deadline because he's he's like in that $9 million range. He's a guy that you can kind of tack on the end and help go get you either maybe a big boy if you want to include one of your larger contracts, but also someone in the sort of mid-salary area.
Schroeder finally looks, at least for a game, the guy that they traded for. He was really good in defending Therese Maxey, and Kerr talked about how good he was as an on-the-ball defender. Are you seeing the text line?
Yes, I am.
Like, we need to research this. So apparently, the moniker Buddy was given to him by his mom. This is according to the text line. And it was derived from Bud Bundy from Married with Children. Please tell me that isn't true. I would hope that there's a little bit more depth to it than Bud Bundy.
Well, as you well know,
David Faustino.
We have a vast 95.7 The Game research division, and so we're going to get someone on that. To me, I'll buy it. The fact that he is named Buddy, though, it is appropriate. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched him in interviews. I think I've had the chance to like interact him at the podium like twice. He is very friendly.
Yeah, he's an affable guy.
He's a cool dude. He's not. I feel like a lot of shooters get bad raps because they play selfishly. They get the ball, they shoot it, they don't really care about other things, or maybe that's just what they're good at. Buddy's not that way. I think Buddy's a really good team player, and he's someone that off the court, even if he's in a shooting slump, for example, he doesn't pout. In fact, he actually works harder. Like Buddy Hield is the guy who shoots to begin the day and will get left by the bus because he's on the court shooting. So whether he's good or bad or other, he doesn't. I'm not worried about Buddy Hield.
He has a gym in his house, and they say that's all he does. He has a 94-foot legal-sized gym in his home, and he gets up shots every single day. I mean, he's addicted. Sort of like Chris Mullin back in the day. You talk about a basketball junkie. That's all this guy does. But Buddy Hield has really been a disappointment over. I mean,
he's been brutal.
He has slumps, and shooters do, but this is sort of prolonged. And he's getting some good looks at the rim, but this is getting a little ridiculous.
Carr said the Bundy story is true about Buddy.
Did you watch Married with Children? That was obviously before you.
Then no. No,
It's still like, you know.
No, I watch older things. Dude, my sweet spot or my blind spot would be between, like, I like black and white movies, and then I like newer films. So
these aren't films. These are ridiculous, silly sitcoms.
Yeah, those I kind of missed the boat on. Yeah. Like MASH, I've heard is great. Haven't seen it. What was the one they were talking about? See, Steiny and Guru will like go down the list of all these sitcoms from back in the day. Like I was big into Seinfeld. That's probably the latest I go back on American sitcoms.
So I tried to do a Seinfeld reference from an episode where I was talking about how Brock Purdy needed to play well at the last 2 games of the season so that he had leverage in his contract so that he would leave on a high note, which was a George Costanza episode where George Costanza always wanted to leave the room on a high note, keeping, if you tell a joke and people laugh. Thank you. That's as far as we got, but nobody had any idea of what it is that I was talking about. So, but Buddy Hield has got to shoot it. If there's one sort of like area of concern the other night, it was that Buddy Hield, while everybody else, and you know how contagious shooting is, and everybody shot it well, except for Buddy, who continues to, or Chavano, who continues to stay in this funk. And that's really sort of problematic going forward. But it was good to see, you knew that worm was going to turn sooner rather than later when it came to the likes of Schroeder. So Schroeder's playing well.
Well, he's got to shoot it well tonight.
Yeah, but it's good to see. But you could see that he was showing progress and showing signs. And he was talking about like how difficult it is to sort of assimilate with this basketball team, and that the Warriors do it a different way. There's some complexities as far as their offense is concerned. So you need a little patience when it comes to Schroeder. But as far as Jonathan Kuminga is concerned, I cannot trade him now because unless you're going to give me somebody else who can create like him, and I don't know of anybody. I mean, he's so important to the Golden State Warriors. The defense is a work in progress, and I think that more than anything else is the reason why he was going in and out of the Steve Kerr doghouse.
Yeah, I mean it's the little things, and it's the little things, but in the context of he can't do the big stuff consistently, or he couldn't. But that hasn't been the case for the last, I would say, 5 or 6 games. I mean, I would push back on Kerr. He said the other night Kuminga has now played 5 great games in a row. I don't think he's played 5 great games. But to me, that's also encouraging. Like, over 6 games, he's been averaging 24.5 points, 8 rebounds, which is important, and 3 assists. And he's shooting 53% from the floor, 35% from 3, 72% from the line. I will take all of those numbers. And over 6 games, he hasn't played perfect games. Like, he had a stinker against Cleveland, as the Warriors did. I don't think he played particularly well against the Lakers. So, like, amidst this 6-game stretch, he's had a couple of bad games, but overall, his numbers have been really encouraging. That's exactly what I will take from Kuminga, and why I think he needs to continue to play off the bench, it appears, major minutes. Because even if he has a bad game, he's still helping you now. And that was something that Kuminga could not do, I believe, before this year. If he didn't have a good game, he really hurts you. But he's getting to the point now at just, again, age 22, where in his 4th year, it feels like even if he's not playing well, his talent and now the other decisions that he's making on both ends of the floor are helping you positively. So that's what I'm encouraged about. He could go get you 20 last year, but he couldn't, if he didn't have it going offensively, get you 10 rebounds or get to the free throw line 10 times. That's what he can do now, and that's something that I would say nobody else, including Curry, can do, which is, even if I'm not scoring, let me go get to the free throw line 14 times And the Warriors haven't had a player that can do that. So I think Kuminga has looked awesome, and it would take a lot for me to move off him at the trade deadline.
That's why I think it's so asinine to think of moving him for a guy like Jimmy Butler. Like, he cannot get older on this basketball team. Someone point out to me where an aging basketball team did anything. It doesn't happen. It's a young man's world when it comes to the NBA. And you just look at OKC. God, OKC is dangerous. I watched part of that Knicks game last night from a bar. Felt like you. But it was all...
Oh, so we swapped spots.
OKC. What were you heard?
I was at a friend's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just watching the game. Watch that and then the Lakers-Hawks.
Yeah, I saw part of the Lakers-Hawks as well. The Lakers have been playing well of late. Really quick, you guys have probably did this, but that was vintage Charles Barkley when he just... went after J.J. Redick the other day.
I think we have that sound if you want to play it.
Why not?
It's around somewhere.
Yeah, if we get a chance, Carter.
I think it might be on the morning roast board, Carter. Either that or the Willard and Dibbs board. We can also tee it up, and I can go grab it for the next break, too. But it was... I don't think either of them were right, by the way. Like, Barkley saying, I'm going to make your life hell for having his own opinion is, I think, childish, which Barkley can be. And J.J. Redick saying it's a fact that players are basically better than they used to be. I don't really know how you prove that factually. Like, that's just an opinion you have.
It was so Charles Barkley. And it's why that show is what it is. And I love that line. In fact, I'm going to steal it. If you're going to come after the king, don't miss.
Oh, he has Barkley on J.J. Redick.
Here we go.
Was he just talking about folks on TV?
He said something about we're the reason people ain't watching this crappy product we got. I said, JJ. Yeah, us. Like, we out there jacking up 100 threes a night. JJ, I don't know Jason Monroe. I don't know who that is, but JJ, you come for the king, you better not miss.
Don't miss.
Because I can get you, brother, because I got your Lakers games. You can't hide them flaws they got. You just a dead man walking. They got rid of Frank Vogel, who did a good job. They got rid of Darvingham, who did a good job. But you came out there thinking you were going to change things with that same ugly girl you went on the date with.
64-51 was your halftime score. As we get back to the highlights, and Rudy Gobert.
He came in there thinking, I can make this thing work. Hell, you can.
77, 71.
Put the makeup on that pig.
Man, the Lakers are pigs.
The Lakers stink, man.
Oh, man, okay.
I loved every bit of it. Well, that's why that show is what it is.
I don't know who he was referring to. Going after the girl, I think, was a step too far. But the rest of it was inbounds to me.
Well, he wasn't referring to his wife, but rather the Lakers.
Oh, like Jeannie Buss or whatever? Is that who he's talking about?
No, that the Lakers are, it doesn't matter what it is that you do to that team. You dress them up. They're just not, they're still an ugly basketball team.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, look. By the way,
Jeannie Buss, no. I don't think
that's not his line, by the way. You know that, right?
What?
Come at the king, you best not miss.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of stealing it. Like for some of these callers that want to come after me, you come after the kahuna, you best not miss.
Well, that would be an original. That would be
Where's it from?
Variation.
Is that from?
It's from The Wire. So Omar Little in the first season.
That's awesome. Omar Little Devone. Go ahead.
Omar Little Devone. That's right.
That's his last name.
But Weebay and another assailant that gets killed in the scene try and go after one of the guys on the corners, and Omar Little ambushes him. And I think he shoots Weebay in the leg, and Weebay's kind of rolling around this car.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just listening, and...
Yeah.
And so Omar always whistles, and then you just hear at the very end of the episode, hey, Weebay, you come at the king. You best not miss.
Weebay, who had the fish tank, right?
Yes.
Exotic fish.
Yeah, Weebay, one of season one's nice characters.
That is awesome. Okay. I had no idea that's where it was from.
But no, it's a great line. It is a fantastic line.
Yeah, that is. There were a lot of them. There were a lot of them from that movie or that show. But Charles Barkley going after J.J. Redick, that's why that show, it's all Charles Barkley, man. And I had some fears, like if they go to ESPN, that's where they're headed, right? I believe.
Yeah, I mean, they are going to go there next year. You can't get rid of that show.
But that they just stay organic. I don't want them to sort of read into their own headlines and oh, we got to be funny. We're now on a new network. Let's It has to be like that. It just has to come organically. And when you have Shaq, who doesn't need to say anything, but when you just hear him in the background hyperventilating, it just is perfect. Like, it's just so well distributed. And then there's always Ernie playing the traffic cop, like, hey. Let's come on.
Yeah, he's reading the halftime scores, trying to get Barkley off of ripping JJ Redick, which I thought was really funny. But the one thing that I am concerned about that show is I do think the production matters. And they always talk about how, it's what Underdog or another producer that they have that's putting these quick things on the board will grab, funny tape of Charles Barkley falling from back in the day or something like that.
Those memes are like everything.
Exactly. So the production is a big part of the show. That would be my one concern about them going to another network. Do they get to keep the same production staff? Do they have to take ESPN's? And does that mess with the show at all? Because the on-air chemistry is unmatched. I mean, that is probably, if you're trying to construct a sports host, a sports studio show, I mean, that's gold.
Yeah, it's perfect. Wait, Ernie's not there, right? Is Ernie staying at TNT?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think Ernie is going with him, right? Because
I thought Ernie was just going down with TNT.
Well, they said that they wouldn't do it if Ernie wasn't involved. I mean, I hope that Ernie, he is Turner Sports. His dad is Turner Sports. But
that's a good call. Yeah, I think that production team's got to go. Why not? They're part of the show.
Well, it would be because Disney doesn't want to, I don't know, pick them up or pay them or something like that. But I think they're a big part of it. Even if you have Barkley, and I love I forget who the fill-in is for Ernie. It's like Sandberg or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
or as Charles refers to him, half man, half makeup.
Adam Lefko.
Oh, that's
right.
Adam Lefko. Yeah.
Sorry, he looks like Andy Sandberg. but it's just not the same, and I think they still got a lot of great shows left. I don't know, like, do you think that they rag on the NBA the way that, because I've heard some other people say this too, like Redick just basically stole Jason McIntyre, who works for The Herd for Fox. He was doing one of his McIntyre hot take segments or something. He was like, the worst thing for the NBA has been Inside the NBA, because it's the most popular show in the league and all they do is kill the players. I don't really get that. Like, if there are good games, if there are good players, then they are complimentary and they talk about how great guys are. I think that Barkley, who's probably the most critical one, just has a very high standard, and he's honest. Like, he doesn't think the Warriors are very good, so he'll tell you they're not very good. But in 2022, when they won the championship, he ate crow. So it's like, I don't think they just sit up there and besmirch the NBA.
I think what they do is really similar to what you and I or anybody else sitting on their couch does. It's like, you'll sing the praises of somebody that's good, and then you're just really candid about somebody that stinks. And that's just sort of why it resonates with people. It's just very sort of common man. And I think that we live in a world when it comes to media, especially as it relates to sports, where everybody's fluff. Everybody wants to kiss up, and everybody does essentially the same thing. Since Charles Barkley, people have tried to create an edge. ESPN has tried to duplicate that show on so many different levels, but they can't. And it's because there's a raw honesty to that show that you can't, it doesn't scale to ESPN or Fox. I think it's because of Charles Barkley, and whatever the hell it is that he's paying, or they're paying him. It's kind of like Steph Curry. It's a bargain deal because he deserves probably $100 million more.
Well, I don't think that there's a person on television in sports that was as good as Barkley was as a player, and that is now as self-deprecating as he is as a broadcaster. Like, Barkley isn't afraid to make fun of himself.
Oh, that's half the show.
Exactly. Yeah. But he's a Hall of Famer. Like, he's one of the was top 50, now top 75 players of all time. He's on the dream team. Like, that's something that I think goes maybe unappreciated. There's not many people out there that don't Barkley takes himself seriously, and he'll clap back at, like, Redick, but he'll go at other players. Like, he won't, I don't know. I just feel like on the show, he's not afraid if he's wrong to make fun of himself. I mean, hell, they do which team he played for? The segment at the beginning of every single season where he doesn't know any player on any team. And basically they just talk about how Barkley doesn't follow the league. He always during college basketball, because they have the rights to the tournament on TBS and TNT, he didn't watch college basketball. I think he watches Auburn, but he didn't watch college basketball. And he's going to talk about Marshall and Clark Kellogg, who actually does watch college basketball. We'll just call him out on it. Like, Charles, you don't know what you're talking about. And he finds a way in a disarming fashion to both give credit, but also be critical and basically just not take himself seriously, which I don't think enough people do on TV.
Well, it's because at the end of the day, it's entertainment. And I think we forget about that. We just stay within this, well, it's got to be sports related. But he's entertained. It's like a television show. It's like a popular television show.
All right,
we got to get to a break.
Who are you trading for on the other side, Dan?
Yeah, we'll continue this thing until 1 o'clock, and I'll tell you on the car ride home. But I'll finally get to it. By the way, so I have these. Do I have 10 seconds? So I was with
our show.
A couple of buddies last night. Shout out Trader Sam's. I know you've been there. I know you've closed that place down a couple.
Why do you got to do that? You were the one who was boozing last night.
I'm just telling you. That's how you
down
roll.
your road. Hey, you come at the king. You best not miss, buddy.
So they pointed this out to me that Greg Cosell, as we talk about legendary broadcasters, no, I'm just stopping right there. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to, I'm going to leave it alone.
We love him.
But he's related to Howard Cosell, which I didn't know. Is that common knowledge around here?
So I always thought they looked alike, but I never.
He's the nephew of
research.
Howard Cosell. Apparently.
They kind of have a similar cadence. Not a similar voice.
A little
similar
staccato,
cadence.
sort of, yeah. Very, very similar. Although they seem to think that
Muhammad Ali steps into the ring opposite Joe Frazier.
The turbulent 60s. All right, we'll be back after this on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
7 Giddings, it's Dan Avone, Pasta, Carter Chickering behind the glass today.
Oh, we got the A team in the building.
No doubt, man. All we need is Jersey Ken to somehow squeeze in there.
He's listening.
And then we would have like a perfect, 900 pounds of producers in there.
But easy, all right? We got resolutions coming.
It's well proportioned. I mean, Carter goes at 6'8", and Jersey Ken is a well proportioned young man.
Well, thanks to Carter, I think we would have the tallest average producing crew in all the West Coast, because the Rizzy, me and Steve are like a 5'10", extraordinarily average. Carter brings us up to a height where it doesn't matter which other starting 4 or 5 in radio we're matched up against. We got the advantage.
Yeah.
We can always throw it to Embiid.
I would say that in terms of they always say, like, you've got to play sports a little bit in order to sort of understand. Sorry, that went right over my head. But now I acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But you've got to play sports a little bit to sort of understand it, right? If you're going to talk about it, you got to, you don't have to play collegiately or even in high school, but you got to, have played at some point.
Or
right?
just have been a part of a team sport at any level.
Some sort of insight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a prerequisite, whatever. But I would put this.
But you can tell when someone hasn't.
I would put this crew at 95.7 The Game, and I'm talking in its totality as far as the producers and on-air talent against anybody that's talking sports in this market. If we were to go pound for pound, roster for roster in terms of athletic abilities, and if we were to get into a 5-on-5 basketball game or a softball game for real, there's nobody that could touch us.
Now, there are some people at this station.
Of course, I couldn't play because I'd be a ringer,
who are deceptively unathletic. Like, there are some people here that you think have game, and they are not to be named. You think are good at sports, and let me tell you, they are not. Now, we have also some people that are that are deceptively athletic, can neither confirm nor deny, that are deceptively athletic. Like, I bet Steve over there, he'd probably walk around like it's,
Pasta's all baseball, bro.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. The baseball players, and I've got a soft spot for them, I do. Those are the ones you got to look out for, because you never really know how athletic a baseball player is, because the sport doesn't necessarily lend itself to displaying ridiculous athleticism.
Cecil Fielder.
Well, Cecil Fielder was, dude, Prince Fielder, his son?
Yeah.
Could dunk.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, he's like 310 pounds.
Yeah.
The guy was a beast. I mean, Mookie Betts might be the best athlete in all of sports.
I'm not sure about that.
Have you seen? He does everything. He can play basketball. He can play soccer.
He really might be.
He's a 300 bowler. He can golf. And obviously, he's an MVP candidate. I'm just saying, man, you better watch out for those baseball guys. Have you seen some of the first pitches that basketball players throw?
Yeah, it's
Dude,
bad.
It's embarrassing. Like, Joel Embiid is, great athlete, all the rest.
Can I give you just a side story? I shouldn't.
Might as well throw underhand.
So I was doing sports, and I was on TV, and so my producer said that there was somebody throwing out the opening pitch for the New York Mets opening day. And it was a political, I believe it was the governor. And usually my producers got to fill me in with who this guy is, but it's like this guy is one of those terrible, terrible arms. And so I shouldn't even rehash this. So this guy.
Nobody's listening.
So this guy throws the opening pitch out, and he's like the governor of New York. He literally throws this thing into the opposing team's dugout, and he's aiming for the catcher. And so I just go off on him on the air. I'm like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me. Can we at least get it within the neighborhood?" I'm like, "What are you, blind? This is ridiculous." And as it turns out, he was legally blind. And I dealt with calls. I had to go down and I had to apologize. I went straight to the news director's office. And and I, of course, blamed it on my producer. And he got canned. No, I won't do that.
Jesus, Devone. I don't know this side of you. Well, Carter, Steve, look out. Don't get Devone.
I'll throw anybody under the bus to save my ass.
Don't give Devone any wrong information.
Let's get back to the Golden State Warriors. So do you want?
Yeah, they got any blind kids? What?
Do you want to get to my tease here about? This is sort of tongue in cheek, so I'm not
No, I've been seriously trying to think about. So Devone,
all right.
45 minutes ago, was like, I got a player for the Warriors that I'm starting to come back around on. So it has to be someone that has surfaced in trade talks before, I can only assume. And I would imagine it's somebody that's been connected to the Warriors in the last
Not
year.
really. He's been connected to a lot of teams.
A lot of teams.
A lot of people. I think it's been more of sort of the text line, and people are like, yeah, we need to sort of kick the tires on this guy.
So it's, actually, all right. One sec. So I know it's not Jimmy Butler
No.
to bring people in. There was a report today from The Athletic.
And I'm out on aging free agents.
Yes.
I don't care what it is that they've done in the past. I'm all about today and going forward.
Sure.
And the Warriors are an old basketball team, so miss me with all these old guys.
They are, especially if they trade Kuminga. But you're out on Butler. Sounds like the Warriors are out on Butler for now, and acquiring him via trade at the deadline is going to be something they're not interested in. They've had no trade talks with Miami. Paul George can be traded, but probably is not an option. Markkanen cannot be traded. My guess is you want Zach LaVine.
No, although Zach LaVine, you can't get Zach LaVine anymore. Zach LaVine was one of those guys that was a bargain basement deal. He's playing, as are the Chicago Bulls, much better. And he's not on the market anymore. If you want him, you got to give up Kuminga and the entire farm. The idea that Zach LaVine, remember in the offseason, we don't want Zach LaVine, and it just became this take that everybody bought into. Well, guess what? Chicago isn't shopping him anymore because Zach LaVine is good.
Well, I think they might be open to substantial offers. They're 15 and 19, but you're right. And actually, the Warriors, they could have gotten him. They turned down a deal that was Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins for Zach LaVine.
Should have.
You think so?
Zach LaVine is played so much better, which is why.
Well, he's been awesome this year. He's shooting 50% from the floor, 45 from three.
And he's been good, really active, and just changed his game. And that's one of those. Like, I think a lot of us don't watch Zach LaVine, and we just sort of follow the leader. We don't want Zach LaVine.
So why are they below 500? Honestly, I haven't watched a lot of Bulls basketball. My guess would be they don't defend worth a lick.
They're just not good.
But he's good.
He's been really good.
Okay.
He's been really good. Now, you can't get Zach LaVine. Oh, so somebody on the text line, I like this. So we're playing, can you guess the guy Danovo wants to trade for? Brandon Ingram, well, I don't even know if I'm going to give it away.
It's not him?
It's not him, but...
Is it his teammate?
It's getting close.
The big fella? Yeah. Go for it.
Zion Williamson. I think you need to reconsider. If they are willing to, like Zach LaVine over the offseason, if you can get him for a deal.
Yeah.
I began to think about this. If Zion Williamson is healthy, which is the big if.
No.
He is not good. He is a dominant basketball player. You win and he's 24, 25?
I think he's 24 years old.
24 years old. And if you can give up something that you're willing to discard and you hit with this guy, now you become the Warriors that everybody is sort of like trying to get back in the winner's circle with these ridiculous proposals of Jimmy Butler or Markkanen or Paul George or whatever. That makes sense. And it also makes sense not only for Steph Curry, but for your future. The big question is, can he play? But he did last year. And when he does play, how's this? In terms of in the paint scorers, the three best in the paint scorers in my lifetime are Shaquille O'Neal, Giannis, and the big guy Zion Williamson.
Zion Williamson.
You're thinking about it, aren't you?
About it.
I'm like, I'm bringing you in.
I've considered this. This was after the Cleveland loss. Like, to me, everything is still on the table. I know the Warriors just won by damn near 40 points, but they're a game above 500. Depending on what happens tonight, they play Memphis at 5:30. I think Granny will have Warriors live at 4:30.
Did you just relinquish that position? Is that what's going on with you?
Well, so if I do this show, I generally don't work Saturday nights.
Gotcha.
I also, as you know, I have another gig.
The Galloping Gales?
Yeah, so I got to go call games for St. Mary's, and if they conflict, then I will call a game for St. Mary's.
By the way, I saw because of you, and I'll let you get back to your point here.
I don't know. That's fine.
Because of you, I watched I think it was last Saturday. I watched Utah State the
They're
entire
good.
game.
They're freaking good.
Really good. Who'd they win on the road? They beat last week. It was nationally televised.
Was it? Well, it must have been conference play, right?
I mean, that is a good basketball team.
They're 13-1. Oh, they beat. Was it Nevada or San Diego State?
No, San Diego State at San Diego State.
Won by a point.
And San Diego State, and I was like, I got to watch this.
By the way, that head coach is in his first season. He's
really?
I want to say he was an assistant at Alabama, so he's been a part of some good programs. But yeah, they're freaking good, man.
They can shoot it. And they got like a good sort of inside-out game a little bit.
Their backcourt is, I think, a top 5 duo in terms of scoring in the nation. They're freaking awesome. They ransack St. Mary's. Neither here nor there. But anyway, so on weekends, that's where I will go to do games. I'll be doing I'll be at the Warriors game tomorrow, but I think Grandy might be doing that one as well. I'll be on Tuesday against Miami. So I'll have all my Jimmy Butler takes prepared. The thing about Zion is, and I'm not out on him. To me, why I would be in on Zion Williamson is if you think the season is going to the crapper, because you can't rely on him to be healthy. He's currently dealing with the same hamstring injury that plagued him, I believe it was 2 years ago, in which he played like 30 games. So it's kind of a chronic thing that he's dealing with. Yeah, when he played 29 games. Ironically, he was an all-star. But Zion Williamson, you can't expect to be on the floor this season. He's only played 6 games. So if you're trading for him, I don't think it's a trade that is you can rely on helping you this year. It's a trade that you would look to build around him for your future. And he'd be a fantastic second option or even sometimes leading man with Curry. But if you are to, and this is where I think it's important, the messaging from the front office has been maximizing Steph's window. I think Zion Williamson maximizes the Warriors' window. I don't think he maximizes Steph's window, and that's why I don't think it would happen. But if you could buy low on a project player who I think is the youngest guy that has superstar potential, I would absolutely pick up the phone and make that call.
Oh, well, maybe I should have prefaced it that I'm out on this season. I'm one of those that thinks that the best thing that can happen to the Warriors is that prior to last night's...
Well, you didn't like him hitting 22 threes against the Sixers?
No, that was amazing. And I would love to see if there's more of that, if they can recapture that magic, then sure, let's have it. But I unfortunately think that was sort of the outlier. And
House of Prime Rim better watch out.
I know, I saw that. I think that the best thing that can happen to this team is to go to the lottery. I really do. It's just that's where they're at. And nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to admit a rebuild. They're all talking about winning one for Steph. But if you can somehow look to the future with lottery and picks and a Jonathan Kuminga and a younger base, and I know, I get it. It doesn't really work in terms of Steph's world, but it's not going to work regardless because there is no magic pill out there that you can take that's going to bring a basketball player in here that's going to match Steph Curry's next 2 years of trying to win an NBA championship. So with that being said, I would go lottery, and I would look at guys like Zion Williamson. If Zion Williamson, for some reason, and this is a big if, but he did play the majority of last season, and if he can be that guy again, you vault now to the top of the Western Conference in my estimation. If Zion Williamson is playing, and Steph, even at Steph at age 37 or 38, and Jonathan Kuminga, and then throw in whatever you get out of the lottery and a younger basketball team, that's something I can get excited about. But I know nobody wants to. We all want to win now, right? We don't have the level of patience to sort of reset and rebuild for a year or 2 years from now.
Well, I don't think it's about us, and I don't even think it's about members of the front office so much as it is. You think Steph wants to wait through a rebuild and spend the last few years of his career on a team that's a lottery team? Like, I think you're right. Like for the Warriors long term, it would probably be best to start thinking about how you can acquire better young talent. Because as we've seen, if you can find, like, Kuminga is a good piece. If he had another or two good young pieces alongside him, you could see a future. I think one of the reasons I'm so reluctant to trade him at the deadline is because he's literally the only guy that I have reason to believe in right now. So you're right. If you can acquire more young talent, Zion is maybe a little more proven than a lottery pick, but his injury concerns are the reason why he's gettable. Sure, but I don't think you can sell Steph Curry on that. And that to me is the biggest hurdle at this point. And I don't know, maybe you can. Maybe you can say, hey, Steph, we're not really going anywhere this year.
But don't you think Steph
you don't
knows
want
that they're not going anywhere? I know he wants to win, but don't you think Steph is a smart guy?
Yeah, I don't think he's winning. I don't think he thinks they're winning a championship as currently constructed. That's why the Butler thing was interesting to me, is because I actually do think that alongside Draymond and Curry in a postseason series, I could see that team being pretty dangerous. Not winning a championship, but again, it's to me the idea, and this has been my biggest issue with the Warriors, is like they're still sending us these messages and they're marketing them being or trying to get into contention. It's like, you're not. I don't think this team is winning a title this year. Depending on if they do anything at the deadline or this summer, they might not be a title team next year. But the one place they can't be, I think, if you have Curry on the roster, is a bottom feeder. And he literally said that, I forget which time this summer, but he's like, I'm not playing for a bottom feeder. I don't want to be a bottom feeder. And so if you play poor basketball and you struggle as a group, I think you risk losing Steph.
You think he'd walk?
No, but I don't think it's out of bounds for him to say, all right, well, if you don't want to do anything to help me win, I kind of want to try and chase number 5. Would you be willing to put me somewhere that does?
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that and I wouldn't take advantage of it, but I just don't see that in his DNA. I think playing for one team and being in this area, him putting on another uniform, I don't think it's in his future. Could be wrong. And you don't want the Warriors, again, you have to say the right things. You can't say, well, we know you're going to be here regardless.
But that's a problem. I think they've said all the right things, but their actions are different than their words. If they stand pat at the deadline, which I think is a possibility, because anybody will want Kuminga, and I don't think the Warriors want to give him up. So if they stand pat and they have another season, like another month like they did in December, I mean, I don't think Curry's just going to sit here and be like, kumbaya, and the vibes are good, and so we're all right with just going 4-9 for the next 3 months. Like I don't think that's in his DNA personally.
So I'm reading the text line here, and it says Devon wants Zion on the Warriors so he can feast with him at the House of Prime Rib, which, by the way, in La Taqueria, and I don't know this last place, Fogo de Chao.
It's a Brazilian steakhouse on 3rd Street.
Okay.
I think they have a couple of them, but it's an all-you-can-eat Brazilian steakhouse.
So the House of Prime Rib
that would be dangerous for Zion.
So the House of Prime Rib was really sort of popular back in my day, or back when I was like,
That's where all the Niners used to go eat, right?
Yeah, it used to be sort of a coat and tie and older Gen, but it's made a huge comeback. It's like really in vogue now with sort of Gen Y, like a lot of
Van Ness?
people, right on Van Ness. Yeah, I didn't think younger people ate red meat anymore, but
well, I do. So I've never been there before, though.
So the House of Prime Rib, it's funny because the text line saying that that's a place that Zion Williamson would frequent. There's a guy named Mel Turpin who played at the University of Kentucky, and he was a good basketball player, but had a weight issue. And so Kentucky plays in a small college town called Lexington, Kentucky. And literally at the McDonald's, there was a sign, that had his picture with a line through it. And the coach said, "Do not feed this man." At the local McDonald's in Lexington, Kentucky. So maybe we can do something to that degree.
Now, I've never heard... Thank you. I've never heard of someone not being allowed to be fed. I have heard of bars that were not allowed to serve particular athletes.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, specifically in Eugene at the University of Oregon.
Let me guess.
Well, I'm not going to give you the athlete's name, but it's around the time...
Why can't we? It's not public knowledge?
Well, no, I'm not just going to call him out for being an alcoholic.
Oh, well, I didn't want to go there, but I mean, is it...
Well, he was. I mean, that's...
Well, then that's public... No, I mean, I don't think saying his name is... Like, I'm assuming...
It wasn't LeGarrette Blount. All right. But my point is, like, around the time I was in college, 2012, it was around, I want to say, who was the big, D'Anthony Thomas into Marcus Mariota, and then around a little bit after, there was a 5th-year quarterback that had a problem. But they weren't allowed to serve this guy. Like, bars were told, get this guy out of here after a win on game day, because he will do some damage, and he could hurt someone else. So I've never heard of a person being denied a plate of food. Like, what if I literally haven't eaten that day? I'm just hungry. Like, I realize. Oh, also, the one thing I found out about Zion, which could bolster your point. Did you know he has a weigh-in clause?
Yeah, so you can get out of it. The contract.
Well, you can't get out of it, but it becomes non-guaranteed, so you don't.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, you can. There are loopholes because of his weight.
Yeah, so this year, but it also has to do with games played. It's not just his weight. So I think it's like his body mass index plus his weight. It's got to be around 295. He's like 7 weigh-ins during the season. And if he makes weight but plays less than 50 or 60 games or something, then his contract becomes partially guaranteed. So this season, he ain't going to play 50, 60 games. Yeah. If you get him, I think the last 2 years of whatever his rookie max extension was, they become non-guaranteed. So it's not a financial commitment, but you do risk also being a bad basketball team because I think you're going to have to give up something for him.
Well, that's just it. How much that's the bottom line is what is it that you would give up for?
Well, you'd probably have to give up Wiggins and something else because I don't think New Orleans would want like in a perfect world, I would actually try to swap Draymond for Zion.
They wouldn't want Draymond.
Exactly. So you'd have to give up Wiggins. And
that's a mess out there, by the way, in New Orleans. Complete mess.
Have they won 10 games yet?
That's just
I don't think so.
Embarrassing.
Well, their entire team is hurt, and they don't know what they're doing. Well, New Orleans also has been down bad lately. Thoughts and prayers. But the Zion thing, to me, if you get that guy, you are, I don't know. To me, it's a risky move, obviously, but I don't think it's because you're trying to win in the immediate, which isn't the message that we've been receiving from the Warriors.
Somebody in the text line saying it's Justin Herbert, which there's no way in hell.
No, Herbert wasn't the guy directly after Mariota. That's all I'll say.
I don't see Herbert as having.
Herb's fine.
Yeah,
that's my white knight, by the way.
He's amazing.
Yeah, I love me some.
Wasn't
Justin
he like
Herbert.
Is he a mechanical engineering major or something? He's like a really, really smart guy. Is that overblown?
I don't think he's as smart as people purport him to be. Like, anytime you have a major in college that's something other than economics or physical education.
I don't know, man. I went to school with some guys that were engineering majors, and I would look over at their books and their homework and like, what the hell is that?
No. He Herbert's a smart guy. I think it might have been bio or something scientific. But I don't think he's not Andrew Luck, okay? The guy isn't doing aeronautical engineering through school. Also, I have something against, I'm just not a big fan of Oregon.
Let's get out to the phone lines at 888-957-9570 and just the middle of the country to Ohio. And I want to hear from Nick. Nick, where in Ohio are you from?
I live in Springfield, the infamous Springfield, Ohio.
Where the Simpsons are located, and there is where's the Basketball Hall of Fame?
I think that's Springfield, Illinois.
Yeah, okay, either way. What's going on, Nick?
I've been following, back in the Midwest here, I've been starting to take an interest in the Detroit teams again. I grew up in the Detroit area. I've been watching Piston games, and here's a team that last year was 14-68, something like that. And this year they're almost at 500. And they got some young players who are hungry. They defend. They play hard. They have some height. I compare those to the Warriors, who are in the middle, just spinning their wheels. I mean, as far as progress, I think you got to bite the bullet and you got to go younger, rebuild, do it now. And if you're really a Warriors fan, I love Steph Curry. You know, he's the greatest. I know this isn't popular, but you got to, I think, trade him as soon as you can for some prospects and young players. I just think that I bet the Pistons will have a better record next year than the Warriors if the Warriors keep trying to get aging stars. So that's where I'm at.
What's your favorite Pistons teams of all time? Do you go back to the Chauncey Billups days? Is that it?
I really like the Bad Boys, but in retrospect, they were some pretty nasty characters. So But that was the most fun for me and what I remember the most.
All right, Nick, we got to get to a break, but we'll talk about it. Yeah, the Detroit Pistons are a team that's on the upswing with, Beasley and Cade Cunningham, Dern and company, but no one's trading. I'm sorry, Steph Curry. I hear it from time to time. It's just not happening, people. It'll never happen, nor should it. We'll continue the conversation about the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry. Uh-oh. All right. Maybe Evan's going to be the guy that's going to send him someplace. We'll talk about it next on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back to 95.7 The Game. I'm reading the text line. It's Evan Giddings. It's Dan Avone. So back when Don Nelson apparently was coaching the Warriors, this is according to the 510 on the text line, there's a story that Nelson shows up at the hotel room of Victor Alexander. I remember him with his room service order. I remember there was a story. Do you remember there was a pitcher by the name of, I know this because he was the legend in Hawaii, Sid Fernandez. El Cid, who used to be part, I want to say he was part of that Met team with Ron Darling when they beat the Boston Celtics and the ball went through the wickets of one Bill Buckner. Sid Fernandez, the heavy-set left-hander who never really fulfilled his promise. But I remember in Fort Lauderdale, because he had a weight clause, and there was a pitcher, I forget his name, that was trying to make the squad, and it came down to him and Sid Fernandez. And he would order like 8 Domino pizzas and have it delivered to Sid Fernandez's room, just hoping the big fella would crush him in the middle of the night.
That's that's borderline major leaguish. Like when the movie I'm talking about, when they'd stick the red sticker in the other guy's locker just to mess with them, started doing different things. That's pretty funny. That's borderline diabolical, to be honest.
Giddings, Devone, and Zion and San Francisco, once again, 650 and the text line. Look out, Bay Area, Chick-fil-A, In-N-Out, and Taco Bell. I've never had In-N-Out. Are you a fast food guy?
Not really. I mean, I'll have it every once in a while. Like, so when I drove up to Sac on my way back that night, like there wasn't anything open, so I had some Taco Bell. But you can, I don't know. Fast food isn't really doing it for me.
In-N-Out, is it as advertised? It seems as though In-N-Out and Five Guys I always hear about.
Devon, you've never had In-N-Out?
I've never had it.
And you've lived here your whole life?
I know. Well, where is it? Down in the Fisherman's Wharf? There's only one, right?
There's only one in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Second most profitable one in California, actually.
Yeah, I know.
That sounds about right, dude. But I'll tell you what, past 10 p.m., the stuff that you can see at In-N-Out Burger in Fisherman's Wharf, there are stories to tell. Because it could be a fight going on outside. It could be some people throwing fries at somebody else. There could be a food fight. There could be, number one, you're always going to have to wait like a half hour. But while you're waiting in line, the amount of things that go down in that place is just, like, I would never want to work at that In-N-Out Burger if I was to work at In-N-Out. And it's pretty good, but I think it's overblown by a lot of Californians, which is why it has a bad rap.
Well, what's the place that sells, I'm looking it up right now, fried chicken and waffles down south?
Waffle House?
Oh, that thing is like...
Now, Southern
that's
fast
an
food
MMA fight in the middle of the night.
Is a whole different ball game. Dude, when I lived in North Carolina, we had Zaxby's, the chain, extremely good chicken. Waffle House, obviously. That's also more about the stories because that place is open until like 3 a.m. and a lot of the diners.
You better be packing if you're going in that place after 2.
Well, I don't know if you want to be packing, but you want to make sure that other people are not packing. And then my favorite, though, was Cookout. Cookout was really good. You could get this like 2 entree for $8 combination. You get like a quesadilla and a burger, but then they have like 50 different flavors of milkshakes. So you get a peach cobbler milkshake, a quesadilla, and a double cheeseburger for like $10. Dude, it was diabetes just walking around.
I was going to say, does that come with an angioplasty?
Yeah, West Coast fast food has got to step its game up.
All right, it's time once again. He's a regular. We just got to give him some intro music. Austin, San Jose, enough said. What's on your mind today, Austin?
Hey, fellas, happy New Year. I can't believe it, man.
Yes, sir.
Hey, listen. Hey, guys. Listen, Evan, I'm a little surprised, man. I got to push back. You came into the show today sort of settling for mediocrity. I mean, they won a game against the Sixers. And by the way, the Sixers don't, the Warriors aren't worried about the Sixers. They need to figure out how they can beat the other teams in the West. The Sixers are going to make the playoffs, believe it or not. I'm not sure about our Warriors. So, with Smigsy number 2, Kuminga, man. I mean, listen, I've been a fan of his from day one. Even when people wanted to throw him out of here, I was always the Kuminga guy. But I will say this. I'm not sure that in the current scheme, current roster, even though Kuminga is excelling right now, at least in terms of what we've seen lately, can we win with him? No. Is that a team you can put in the playoffs? And I know that, it's great that Kuminga is developing and all these guys are developing. And by the way, Dre and Steph could give a damn about whether these guys develop or not. Don't kid yourself. They care about playoff appearances, building their legacies, building their brands. So they start the season with saying, can we pencil ourselves into the playoffs? That's what Steph and Dre are driven by, not by can we struggle to make the play in. So let's focus on what matters to the guys that have done it already. It's a great story that we're playing better. We're still mediocre, and Steph said that. He said we're mid, so we don't have to guess about what he thinks. He's told us what he thinks. Buddy Hield needs to go. Draymond's made that pretty clear, although I thought it was a little rude the way he went after him, but he's basically saying Buddy's not part of he doesn't see Buddy as part of a winning formula. So that brings me to Butler. Never been a big fan of Jimmy Butler for the reasons you guys said. Sort of seems to have issues with people and a little bit of toxic, but I would hesitate to say that he wouldn't make the Warriors a playoff team. I think he actually would. Stars like to play with other stars. So to say that it wouldn't work or I wouldn't do it or he wouldn't make us better, Evan, I don't know how you could really say that. I would disagree with it. I think he actually would make us better. And I think if you're talking playoffs, I think he definitely puts us in the playoffs, and then we see what happens. But for this team right now, you're not going to sell me on the fact that this team is a playoff team. I'm just not buying it, guys. I'll keep listening.
Do I sound like Devone? No, I'm serious. I feel like I was the one proposing that they go get Jimmy Butler, and Devone's the one that's out.
I think you want to come after me there, Austin.
Yeah, but you sort of backed off it by saying, yeah, but he's a toxic guy, and you get into the contract. Listen, guys.
I was listening to the reasons of the Warriors' report of why they're not pursuing him,
and I think that's a bad thing. Don't you guys find that to be really kind of concerning that a team that's mid, according to the Steph, is not pursuing? Why? The question is, why wouldn't you be pursuing him, particularly with the current team, which at the best is you might get a 6, you might sneak into the 6. You're more likely to be a playing team. So anybody that could get you into the dance, why wouldn't you be looking at it? If you don't like Butler, tell me someone else, guys. Don't tell me you're going to ride this team to the end. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, guys. I'll keep listening.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, no, I actually agree with him. That's the reason why I was going through the Slater and Amick report is because I think those are the same reasons that we've heard the Warriors not go and acquire a big name player. It sounds like the same rhetoric we've heard for the better part of a season and a half as the Warriors have gone in the wrong direction. So my issue is with the messaging from the front office, which is we want to maximize the window and we want to help Curry, whatever they purport. I'm not seeing it. And so Jimmy Butler, I think, is a player that absolutely could help the Warriors. But I don't think that the Warriors are going to want to go get him because, again, it's like every time a player starts playing, well, we can't move him. Why can't you include Wiggins? Like, why can't you? Because he's the only guy that's worth anything for them right now. He's the only guy that can help them get a better player. I think if in a vacuum, if I just told you could swap Wiggins for Butler, would you do it? It can't work financially, but would you do it?
I would.
Yeah, I would too. And that to me is kind of what that's what I would be interested in. But again, it doesn't sound like it's going to happen. And I think we're going to end up at the deadline in a similar place we were last year, which is a minor move. And we might have already seen it because Schroeder's here. But people are going to be left wondering what direction this thing is going in.
Well, if you're mid and you're a middling team in any sport, to me, there's always two options. Either you start anew, as I've suggested, and get younger, and then look to rebuild, reset, transition so that you're a good, young, up-and-coming basketball team in the next year or two or longer. Or you look to cash in right now and try and find those pieces to become a relevant basketball team as we speak. To me, that's not an option because Jimmy Butler, so let's just say Jimmy Butler comes here for Wiggins straight up or Draymond. Chances are, as far as I'm concerned, you're not going to the Western Conference Finals. You're not winning an NBA championship. I could be wrong. But if it doesn't work, which is highly likely, well, then what? Now you got Jimmy Butler, a year older in his mid-30s. You know Steph is going to be 37, and you know Draymond's going to be 36. You would have just mortgaged part of your future in draft picks, because I'm assuming if Riley's going to trade this guy, he's going to want something in return that's going to fit that of the Miami Heat. And so they're going to want picks, or they're going to want younger players. And so now you just mortgaged younger players. It may include, who knows, a Trace Jackson-Davis and draft picks for a Jimmy Butler and a Golden State Warrior team that just got older. So now what? I guess is sort of the question at the end of the day.
Well, now what is you try and go as far as you can. I don't think it's extremely far, but you give it a run, and then you assess from there. I mean, it is interesting to me, though, Dan, because you are of the mindset that this Warriors organization needs to rebuild. I actually think that Jimmy Butler, if you mortgage your younger players, puts you closer to what you want, which is being in the lottery. Because if you don't win and Jimmy Butler leaves, or maybe he stays and is the injured version of himself and he's a malcontent, like, you're not a good team anyways. So you end up closer to being a lottery team either way, because you put an end date to the timeline that is Curry's quote-unquote window. Like, I think what fans are frustrated with is that
I think
they haven't chosen a side.
You get quicker to a rebuild in a lottery without having to deal with Jimmy Butler and that contract. And all Jimmy Butler could do is make you maybe get to the playoffs and prolong the inevitable.
Well, for a year, though. I mean, it's not like you're saying Jimmy Butler is going to help you make the playoffs for the next 3 seasons.
I'd rather just, why prolong what's going to be it's just imminent that this is a team that's going to have to go in another direction. And that's what the mistake that mid-teams always make, is that they look towards the glass being half full, and they look over the fence and saying, hey, what can we do so that we can join, the better half of the Western Conference? When really sort of the smart way to approach it is, look at, if this is going to work long term, we're going to have to make some sacrifices today. And I know Lacob and Steve Kerr and Steph Curry, and that's why it's this conundrum, because it's so difficult. And it always gets back to, do dynasties ever end well? No, and this is why. But I do think that at some point you cannot continue down this road. At some point, you've got to accept the fact. And the facts are that you're a team that's comprised of Buddy Hield, of Dennis Schroeder, of Lindy Waters, of GP2, of Kyle Anderson, Looney, and company. And that does not stack up to where the Western Conference or the elite are of the NBA. So there's only one way out, and it's not Jimmy Butler, and it's not one player away. It's about finding a new foundation. And I think it starts with the lottery and Zion Williamson.
Oh, my God.
I don't know about Zion.
Yeah,
when Zion's on, though, you got to admit, like last year, he's as close to unstoppable. I mean, him and Giannis and Jokic.
Yeah, so why do you think he's available?
Because he's been hurt in high school. He was hurt in college, and he was hurt his first day in the NBA.
Yeah,
I admit that there's a high level of risk, but if it hits, it all depends on what it is that I'm going to. If I can, I'm willing to take the risk if you want fill in the blank, players that I'm willing to discard.
Yeah, I would be willing to give up a decent amount for a player of that caliber, but again, it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're hoping that Zion transforms into something that he's never been, which is a healthy and dependable player. So, but that also gets you closer to the lottery, because if he doesn't play, which is probable, then your team's going to suck, and you're going to end up like the New Orleans Pelicans. The issue in this all is, and I don't even know if it's an issue, but I think the biggest piece we're missing is Curry. Like, I personally, this is where you and I differ.
Yeah.
I don't think that Curry is going to be content with this team middling, being mid, or being below average, which they've been for the last month, for the remainder of his career. I just don't.
Yeah, I never said content, but go ahead.
Well, but you don't think that he would do anything to force the organization's hand?
I don't.
I disagree. I think that if this team misses the playoffs like they did last year, and they don't really do anything this summer to try and upgrade the roster, they lean more into their younger guys. Maybe they use a lottery pick that they have. They go get a nice player. But let's say it's like a 19-year-old. They draft a project. Curry's going to be like, Joe. Like, seriously, like, what do you want from me? And I realize the Warriors are paying him max money, and he's well compensated. But I just believe he's more of a competitor than that to just go silently into the night for what's left of his career. I think if you don't do anything, either at this deadline or this summer, that improves your roster and helps you move closer to the postseason, not even closer to necessarily being a contender, but you cannot miss the playoffs with Curry still on the roster back-to-back seasons and not risk the possibility of him not retiring a Golden State Warrior.
I'm rolling the dice, and I know it's a bit of a risk, and I would never make this public, but I think Steph Curry, and you and I talk about this all the time, is one of one. Now, what it is that you just said clearly was applicable to, Karl Malone back in the day and any player.
Well, Malone didn't have 4 championships.
But any player that wants to win another one, however it is.
Gary Payton did the same thing.
That wants to either win their first or maybe wants to win another one because that's who they are. I just don't think that Steph Curry, and again, I just think he's different. He's so different that we've never seen anybody like this as far as what it is that he does on the floor, but more importantly, off the floor. He's just wired differently. And I do think that quality of life, I always get back to this, that being entrenched in this area, the community, what it means to be with one basketball team. Now, you're going to have to sell it on him. You can't just simply say, well, we're in a rebuild mode, and can you just, go off to the sunset with a really crappy team? And that therein lies sort of like the Steve Kerr, Lacob, Dunleavy relationship with Steph Curry. It's just how you frame this to him. And it cannot be, we're not going to be good, and then you're going to retire. It's just, you've got to be a salesman a bit here. But I do think that Steph, at the end of the day, and Lacob will not trade him. Lacob, if Steph Curry says, look at, it's going to be pick a lane here. If you go in that direction, then you need to trade me. I think Lacob would cower and say, okay, what is it that you want? If it really comes to a head, because there's no way Lacob, first of all, wants to be that guy or that owner that traded Steph Curry, nor, again, I always talk about that this guy is a business tycoon, and he knows that Steph Curry prints money. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about for Lacob. I know Lacob wants to win, but Lacob is about revenue models and making money. And Steph Curry does that. And you can't even quantify how much money he means to this team as long as he's associated with the Warriors when it comes to merch, when it comes to all of those things. You know who is aware of it is Lacob. And there's no way. The minute Steph Curry puts on a Laker uniform, puts on a Charlotte uniform, puts on, and that team now gets all the money. Like all of a sudden, they get the wand. All of a sudden, Squid Game is back.
Squid Game. Look, I don't think the Warriors would ever trade Curry. What I'm talking about is the Warriors doing nothing and settling for, as Austin accused me of, which is fine, for mediocrity, and just expecting him to do nothing and collect game checks. Like, I'm sorry. I know that Curry's a nice guy and he's a great dude and he's a model citizen and he's a fantastic face. But to me, you run the risk of pissing that guy off if you do nothing. If you lean more into a rebuild and a reset, I'm not even bringing Draymond Green into this because to me, he's not important in the way that Steph is. But I think the Warriors, if they choose to do nothing, he does not have an everlasting thread of patience. Like, I don't think that his patience is just some infinite tank. I think it will eventually run out. And especially if you are selling the fan base, maybe even him, on this idea that help is coming, and then the help never arrives, I don't know. I think you set yourself up for what you don't want, which is Curry not being the perfect guy that he's been his entire career. Like, you don't want to mistake his kindness for weakness.
I'm just reading this verbatim. What about Kobe? The Lakers had losing records the last 3 years before he retired.
Yeah, and that was after Kobe tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
Now, but to be fair, Kobe said that he wouldn't retire, or he wouldn't stick around and be, a mid player. Like if the moment he couldn't score 25 and help a team win, that he would retire, and that didn't end up happening. Dirk Nowitzki retired in Dallas, and I think his last season they won 20-something games. But to me, I think Kobe was at the point where he was still obviously competitive, but he knew that based on his injury, he wasn't a guy that could go somewhere and help you win a title. I think if Curry believes that he can still be the difference on a championship team, and he is as desperate to win as he says he is, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, not this year, maybe not even next year, but down the line. Again, it's, to me, what the Warriors have to weigh is, are they willing to risk him not retiring a Warrior in order to reset and rebuild?
Yeah, and as I said, they'll never let him go. They just won't.
I'm not talking about them letting him go. I'm talking about him letting them go.
Well, either way, they have to trade him, right? In order for him to go get that fifth ring.
Yeah, so the moment, like if he talks about moving somewhere else to end his career, they just say, sorry, stick it out?
No, I think that before it gets to that point, I do think that Laker would say, okay, uncle, what do you need? All right, let's you're serious about moving. I can't do that. So let's go ahead and get your players, or let's go get in the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes.
Well, I think that's where we're at now. It's like Curry's not going to be as good at age 39 or 40 as he is at age 36 or 37.
But I don't know if Curry has come to the point where he's just like, I want up and out of here. Like, make this happen this trade deadline. Maybe it has. But I don't know that we've reached that threshold. If we do, I do believe that Laker will acquiesce. I really do. But I don't know that Curry has given ultimatums now.
No, I don't think he has, and he may not. But my point is that what I'm trying to emphasize is that this is an important deadline and an important summer. Because if you don't do anything, then next year, if the team is mid, like I have no reason to believe it won't be because you haven't gotten any sort of upgrade, or your play, unless... And that's maybe the reason why I feel like Kuminga is the only player that I don't want to give up at this point, because to me, he's the only realistic player that can take a big enough leap to help them compete. Not even for a championship. I'm just talking about for the playoffs.
But wouldn't you agree that Steph knows what's up? I mean, he's aware. He's just, I would say, when it comes to making these decisions, he knows what's out there. And so when people say, well, go get him a player, Steph would probably be the first to admit it, although he'll never say it publicly. Like, even I'll admit that there's no one out there that's going to help me win a title. Like, what it is, I think he realizes that the Warriors' hands are tied to a certain degree. I don't think Steph is. We got to give him more credit in terms of being awake and aware of the market. And Giannis isn't available. The Joker isn't available. Luke is not available. This idea that even Jimmy Butler, Steph he knows that this isn't a one-player solution, I believe.
No, and I'm not talking about that. I don't. Curry's smart enough to know that he's not winning a title with this team. I think just what he's asking for is a chance. Like the other night before the Sixers got obliterated by the Dubs, they lost to the Cavs, right? Curry after that game basically just said, like, this team is average. Like, we're not very good. That to me is him asking the front office to do something about it. And he knows he can still impact it, but it's like, I don't know. Winning a fifth title in Golden State is going to be virtually impossible in my mind. But getting to the playoffs is not that big of an ask. Like half the league, more than half the league, makes the playoffs. I think that's all he's asking for.
I agree with you there. And so maybe the rebuild has to be a little more subtle because of Steph. Like, let's get to the playoffs, but let's also lean in on the youth and go in another direction at the same time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I know we got to hit a break here, but I think you hit the nail on the head last week when we were in the crossover by describing it as a transition. Not a rebuild, but a transition. And that's kind of what I think they're in the middle of right now.
Can we talk a little what's Squid Game when we come back? And then we'll get into the Golden State Warriors.
I'll watch it in the break.
You're not watching Squid Game, man. All right, we'll be back to talk about if you want to get in on Steph Curry, 888-957-9570. Would you trade the guy? We'll talk about it next here. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
You got all kinds of microclimates in the studio out here, or in the 95.7 The Game floor. It's like
just kind of like the area.
It's like it's once you step inside of the studio, you drop like 20 degrees. It's like the Arctic in here. All right. 888-957-9570. We're talking about Steph Curry and Steph. We're considering, would you trade Steph Curry and maybe get some assets in return and let Steph go chase that fifth ring? In my opinion, Steph isn't going anywhere, and I do think that at the same time he can somehow transition and get into a rebuild. What say you, Word, out in Oakland, who joins us here on 95.7 The Game? Word, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Dan? Just listening to the fans, it sounds like most folks are like, under no circumstances do you consider trading Steph. I'm a Niners fan too, so I'll preface that. But as a Lakers fan, I remember those years when Kobe was getting signed to that last $48 million 2-year contract, and nobody wanted to trade him because they just wanted to have Kobe on the court. And it was like, okay, well, we're going to suck for a few years because Kobe's on the court and he's old, and the free agents aren't going to want to come and play with him because he's old, and they're going to be playing for him instead of their careers. So who wants that as a younger player? Same with Steph. Like, those free agents that you want, everybody's talking about go get Zion, go get this player and that player, as if that player is thinking to himself, yeah, right now I'd love to go play with Steph at this stage in his career and that stage of the Warriors stat. Like, this isn't the years when Durant was like, I want to go play with that team because they play a style of basketball that I love. That's not what this team is anymore. And so the idea of playing for just Steph, you're asking fans, of course, they want the team to play for Steph. Players aren't here to play for Steph. They're here to play for themselves. And the idea that Dan, you said that Steph is different and he won't be the guy who wants to go play for another team or won't complain about the current, status of things. He actually said it on our airwaves. He said, and it was a quote, I don't know why, I don't know if it got buried because we don't want to hear it anymore, but he said he's all good as long as the team is not a bottom feeder. Right now, the team is closer to being bottom feeder than a contender, so I don't understand how everybody's so just ignoring the fact that he told us that he's all good as long as the team is not a bottom feeder. Like, he went further than Kobe said. And Kobe was like, man, you think I'm playing for a team and only going to average 19 points a game? Just get out of here. Like, Steph is basically saying the same thing. I'm not playing for a team that's not contending. So if you're just trying to watch Steph because he's in a Warriors jersey and think he's going to be happy with that, then you're just being a selfish fan. Like, I understand, folks don't want to see him leave, but it's like, what do you think he wants? You think he just wants to run around, run through screens and gun threes for nothing to win 40 games or less a year? Like, there's no magic pill coming because these magic pills aren't trying to come to play for Steph at 30-plus years of age. He's missing games. He's missing way more shots. This isn't 2018 Steph. So I don't understand what everybody's thinking in terms of processing where this team's future is. Thanks, fellas. Have a good one.
Thanks, Word.
Well done, Word. Yeah, I understand the bottom feeding, and clearly it's something to take into account. I think there's a difference between saying something and then actually getting to the point where it becomes sort of like that of what we're experiencing in Miami with Jimmy Butler. And it just, again, I just don't think it's ever going to get to that point with Steph Curry. Now, the idea of a transition or a rebuild has to be while you're still somewhat competitive. And I know that might be a contradiction, but you can still appease Steph because I think Steph can see big picture here. But I just, again, I could be completely on my own here that I don't see, first of all, Lacob ever trading him, and I don't ever see it getting to the point where Steph is like, I want out. You're clearly bottom feeding and you're rebuilding. And that's not what I want to do. I want to go to Team X. Can you please make it happen so I can win another championship? I think that there's always going to be some rationale or conversation between the two, that being management or Lacob specifically and Steph Curry, so that they're on the same page as far as how he exit and the direction of the Warriors going forward.
Well, number one, Ward's right about Kobe, But I think that he and Steph are a little different as players. So I don't think that there is as big of a concern from another player coming in to fit around Curry the way you'd have to fit around like Kobe. But where I do think that Curry and Kobe are different is also in the selflessness, because I think that Curry, again, the point is not just, it's not, I think we need to strip ourselves of this idea that it has to be a title. He's not saying, I got to win a fifth. He's saying, I just don't want to suck. And that's what the Warriors did in the month of December. Like, I know they beat Philadelphia. They sucked for a month. That's why they're a game above 500. After starting 12-3, by the way. A team who started 12-3 has never missed the playoffs. He doesn't want to suck. That's why I'm not saying that you got to trade him. All I'm saying is I don't want to let it get to the point where he's forced to make a decision about his future with the Warriors. And so that doesn't mean that you have to go all in for him. You just have to do something. Getting Schroeder is a nice piece. There's been a report out there that the Warriors, instead of being in on Jimmy Butler, are more looking at Nikola Vucevic. That's a nice player. He can help you win some games. Curry's just saying, I don't want to suck while I limp into whatever retirement is. He's not saying I got to be the focal point of a championship team or even the second or third best player on a title team. He's just saying, we can't be stuck in the lottery for the last few years of my career. And I think the Warriors have legitimate reason to believe that they don't have to do that. But it requires some effort on the front office's part. And, for example, getting Vucevic wouldn't necessarily be super expensive. Like, that's a buy low candidate, because I think the Chicago Bulls would be willing to get off him if the Warriors could offer him or offer them, a first-round pick, Gary Payton II, maybe Kevon Looney, and some salary filler. Like, that to me is a move that's realistic, and I think that could help the Warriors, but also show Steph that you're trying. Like, you're not going to mortgage your entire future for him, and I don't think he's asking them to do that. He's just simply saying you can't do nothing.
Yeah, Vucevic is, to me, it's sort of like shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. Yeah, he can improve your basketball team. But
can he help you get to the playoffs? I'm not saying win around, just get to the playoffs.
Well, I guess there's a big difference between not wanting to suck and then chasing another ring and going to another basketball team. So we have to sort of differentiate. If that's not what it is that he wants, if he does not want to go to another basketball team because he wants to win that championship ring, he just doesn't want to suck. Those are two completely different stories.
Well, I think he wants a chance. Like, again, he wants an opportunity to compete in the postseason, to have a chance.
I would agree with that. I think appeasing him.
It's not looking like that's going to happen.
But, okay, so maybe you're not in the lottery, but there has to be, you have to continue to go young and head in a direction so that when Steph does leave the team, you're not left holding the bag, and or Jimmy Butler's contract or Paul George's contract or something ridiculous along those lines.
I agree. But that's why in this hypothetical, like, you're right, Vucevic to me doesn't move the needle drastically. But in this hypothetical trade scenario, I don't think you're mortgaging your future. That's why, like, I am trying to, at this trade deadline,
Vucevic is pretty good. I mean,
what
would you have to give up for Vucevic?
So that's, all right, so Vucevic, if you could do this, would you? Nikola Vucevic, who's, granted, he's 34 years old. He is an older player.
Yeah.
He's averaging 20 and 10, but the Bulls, as we've discussed, are not a great team. You would have to give up, let's say, Gary Payton II, who's an expiring, either of Kyle Anderson or Buddy Hield. I would personally, even though he's stunk, I would lean Kyle Anderson because he's not even playing right now, and Kevon Looney.
So unless the Bulls are just unloading salaries, why the hell would Chicago even entertain that?
Because they're picking up a bunch of expiring contracts.
I see.
And they're a team that is...
Got it.
Yeah, that has financial reasons to move off of him.
Yeah.
So
if they're unloading money, then
you would probably have to attach a first-round pick. I mean, to me, I wouldn't mind doing that. If you're telling me that I'm shortening my rotation, which the Warriors are already doing anyways, you're getting. I don't think he's a great center, but like a stretch 5.
Are we protecting or unprotecting that first round?
There'd probably be some protections.
All right.
But, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be like just completely unprotected.
I would do that. I mean, if you want GP2, Kyle Anderson, and who else did you mention?
Well, I think it might be GP2, Looney, and like Lindy Waters, and a first-round pick.
You could do Gary Payton, Anderson, Kevon Looney for Vucevic and Chris Duarte. That works.
That matches. I would do it.
I mean, again, I think that's why the Warriors roster made sense to me coming into this season. Not just because I thought they might be able to play a little bit, but also you have a lot of guys that you could use to get 1 or 2 in this case. Duarte is kind of a throw-in, but that's where I think the Warriors are at with this deadline. It's not going to get the big fish apparently because there's reportedly out on Jimmy Butler. I think he's the biggest game changer that's available for this season. That's just me. But apparently they don't want him. And so if you're going to do something, it's got to be something around the margins. I don't think Cameron Johnson is someone that the Warriors...
Well, now you're giving up players.
Yeah, like I think the hang-up with the Nets and the reason why he didn't come over with Schroeder is because apparently the Warriors were not willing to move off of Kuminga. I personally think that that's a good move because, like you said, you have to keep something in the cupboard for the future. But if I'm moving GP2, who I'm probably not bringing back this summer anyways, Looney or Anderson, who neither of which have been in the rotation, and some salary filler, I'm willing to come off that first-round pick.
I would too. If we're just matching salaries, and I can get Vucevic he'd be a huge piece for the Warriors because it's one of those things that, they have a hard time obviously matching up with bigs, and they haven't for some time had a serviceable big, and that's exactly what he is. And he's somebody that he's good enough defensively, but he's a good, adequate basketball player with a good touch from the outside. He's a legitimate good center in this league, and the Warriors haven't had one of those since Bogut.
Well, I don't think they've ever had an offensively minded center the way that Vucevic is. They've never had a center that has averaged 20 points per game.
But you don't necessarily need to make a splash at the trade deadline. And you talk about, around the margins. Think about what was the biggest trade piece or the biggest trade that was made at the deadline a year ago, and I'll tell you, it was Dallas because it put them into the NBA Finals, and they almost won a championship with P.J. Washington and Gafford.
Yeah.
And they were there for the taking.
But they didn't give up much to do it.
Well, the Warriors wouldn't have had to either. So it doesn't necessarily...
last year didn't really make much sense. Like those players fit Dallas. I don't know if they would have fit Golden State. What I'm saying is...
You could have used Gafford and P.J. Washington, two-way players with size.
Well, then your boy wouldn't have played. Trace Jackson Davis.
Well...
Like Gafford would have made him obsolete. I mean, I'm saying... Yes, I understand that they're upgrades. They're better players. I don't think that P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford would have impacted the Warriors the way that they impacted Dallas because...
Okay, well, forget about those two players specifically. The point being is that being around the margins, you can find impactful players that aren't named Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jimmy fits, but I also think that Vucevic fits to some extent. I mean...
I'd love it. If Vucevic, and you can pull the trigger for what it is we just outlined. And by the way, you just attacked me with Trace Jackson Davis, who is playing much better of late.
He is. He's playing very well. Vucevic also means that he's probably not going to play a whole lot anymore.
I was thinking about that.
You still want him? I know you like TJD, man. By the way, quietly...
it's not like Vucevic is going to take all his minutes.
I mean, he's playing 32 a night, Vucevic. So. But he would relegate. How about that? He would relegate TJD. TJD had a nice little dunk on Embiid. Yeah. Dude, he's caught a body of some few big men since he's gotten to the league. He had that dunk on Wemby last year. Embiid. Who they got tonight? Oh, you know who better watch out tonight? Edie.
Oh, no. Hey, listen.
TJD's coming for Big Zach.
You willing to eat crow on Zach Edey, who you said would never be able to play in this league?
No. I don't believe he can play. He stinks.
Are you watching Memphis?
Yeah, I'll watch them tonight. They play better without him.
No, that's not true.
You know who's better than
That
Zach
is so
Edey?
not true.
You know who's better than Zach Edey?
Who?
Oh, their backup big, who I can't even name. He went to Virginia. He's bald. God. Edey's fine.
Hey, by the
He
way,
stinks.
speaking of bigs, and you mentioned Wemby, the dunk that Trace Jackson Davis.
Who's my guy?
I'm really. How is this for a prediction?
Jay Huff. That's who's better than Zach Edey.
That's not true. You need to put down your vape or whatever it is that you do.
I did. I left it in 2024. We talked about
that's
this.
right.
Yeah. Wrong vape.
Oh man, that has got college written all over it, man.
Yeah. I left the bongs. Yeah, I left them back.
Do
a long
people
time
still
ago.
use bongs?
You know, I've heard rumors.
So, Wembanyama,
I'm
who
not talking
Trace
about
Jackson Davis dunked on.
Yeah.
How's this for a prediction? I got another one for you. I'm not stopping at Zion Williamson. You ready?
Oh boy. Okay.
San Antonio finishes in front of the Golden State Warriors this year. They're in front of them now as they.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I know. So it's
that
not
might
that
be a
bold,
boat racing.
bold of a prediction, but I think Wemby's ready to take over the mantle a lot sooner than a lot of us thought.
Do you see that last possession? They beat Denver last night in Denver. Did you see?
I don't know if I saw the last possession.
He might be the only player in the league.
Oh, when he challenged the Joker.
He forced Jokic to pass the ball, and he turned it over. And by the way, Stephon Castle almost ruined that game. They were up 1. Jokic throws it away with like 6 seconds left or something. Castle, rookie, UConn, nice player, dunks the ball to go up 3 and gives them the ball back with 2 seconds left with a chance to tie the game. Just run into the corner, get fouled, take time off the clock, and make them they almost ruined that game. But the fact that Wembanyama, and they showed the replay, like Jokic would, and he's got a great high arcing over his head shot. You cannot give the ball to someone against Wembanyama one-on-one, and he's the greatest defensive neutralizer we have in the league.
Well, it's games like that last night where I really think that I use as sort of the barometer that this guy is arriving a lot sooner than any of us anticipated, because it's the last 5 minutes of games is where I want to see how he plays basketball and where he gets his shots. If he's shooting that 3 in crunch time in a close game in the last 2 or 3 minutes of a game, that shows me that he's still not there. I don't want that guy shooting that 3, which I know he shoots at a high percentage, but I want him more of at a mid-range, or I want him to get a little bit closer to the basket as we get into closer moments. And he was so smart with the ball last night. I still think that there's got to be more of a balance. I still want to see him closer to the rim, but he, in just about every way, now you could see the maturity. He's beginning to learn the game. He's learning how to flop a little bit. He took that charge against Embiid and pissed Embiid off.
Well, he's finally over 200 pounds, which helps.
Well, that's the only thing. The only thing that can deny this guy from greatness, much like that of Zion, well, he's the complete opposite of Zion Williamson, is his health. And any 7-footer, or what is he, 7'6"?
7'3", 7'4".
I mean, because he was a good 3 inches taller than the Joker last night.
Yeah, and he's got like an 8-foot wingspan, which is why, I mean, Jokic, don't get me wrong, like Jokic had 41, 16, and 9 or something. He had a great game. But the fact that you can throw the ball to, in my estimation, the best player on the planet in Jokic, and he can't even get a shot off against Wembanyama, and he's 21 years old. Like, that guy is going to be the best player in this league very soon.
It could happen towards the end of this year.
It could.
You want to hear some crazy numbers about Wemby? Through his first 100 games, he has 366 blocks. That's more than Shaq, Alonzo Mourning, Dikembe Mutombo. Through his first 100 games, he has 225 threes, which is more than Klay Thompson and Steph Curry both had through their first 100.
Holy
career
Christmas.
Points. The most ever through their first 100 was Allen Iverson. He had 2,258. Wemby has 2,273. And blocks, he is ahead of rebounds. He's ahead of Andre Drummond, who is next up at 964. He has 1,053.
He's just rewriting everything.
No, I mean, I don't know if we're looking at the next face of the NBA, but he is going to be the best player. And if he stays healthy,
he's the face
he will
of the
be.
NBA.
well, I don't know if he can be just because he's not American, but I think his greatness it's going to be undeniable. Like I've never seen a player as defensively, physically gifted, but also with the wherewithal that he has. Like he's also a smart defender. He's not just, well, I'm so tall that I can block everything. Like he defends the 3-point line as well as he defends the paint, and it's unbelievable.
There's nothing he cannot do. Literally nothing he cannot do on a
You know what he's
basketball.
shooting at the free throw line this year?
What?
88%.
Where's he
Like,
from?
he also can make free throws.
He's high 30s from 3, I want to say.
36. Although he takes 9 of them a game.
He takes too many.
That's a lot. That's an awful lot.
For a guy that big. The only thing that can deny him is from great to getting to where it is that we all think he's going to be is those lower extremity injuries, man. Just the first time he comes up, he comes up lame, blowing a tire, that could be the beginning of the end. The only thing that could stop this guy, there's not going to be another NBA basketball player that can defend this guy. It's just going to be him and injuries. If he stays healthy, if he's one of those guys that, I know Ralph Sampson actually was predominantly healthy throughout his career, so it's not always an inevitability that guys that big are going to go down with an injury. But that's the only thing you got to guard against.
Yeah, can the Warriors go get him?
No.
Like, I know we were just kind of talking about Steph and stuff. Wemby is a player that if the Warriors called the Spurs and said, hey, Curry for Wemby, they're like, we're good. That might be one of the few players in the league where you like Wembanyama, he's unbelievable. Yeah. But as far as the Warriors are concerned, like, again, I just think that to me, this deadline is about trying to improve the team without gutting your cupboard of assets. Like, sending out one first-round pick to me doesn't hurt, but sending out a pick with Jonathan Kuminga is something I'm not interested in.
You can't move Kuminga right now.
I don't think, well, I personally wouldn't. I also don't think that Lacob will. Like, dude, if you can, because Lacob sits courtside, mid-court. Usually on the broadcast, he's like top of the screen whenever they're kind of panning between transition sides. Just watch him when Jonathan Kuminga does anything. And also watch him when Buddy Hield gets the ball.
Chivano?
That's right, Chivano. Until he hits multiple threes again, he's Chivano.
Chivano.
But no, I'm just kidding. Like Lacob, I think Lacob loves Kuminga.
What does he do?
For better or for worse, but
what does he do?
Who?
Lacob. When Kuminga
he's
gets
just excited.
Is he?
Like he's
Like
clapping, he's
proud
smiling. Yeah, he's like a proud papa, just looking at what's his best young player? And I think Kuminga I think he is starting to turn a corner, and I think it is because Kerr is giving him ample minutes. I also think it's because Kuminga is now forcing him to give him ample minutes by how he's making consistent winning plays and not just highlight plays.
What about Podziemski? And when he comes back to
Pods is no longer untouchable. That's what I'll.
But Podziemski, his future with his basketball team, is it as bright as we once thought? Or he has got. See, I like Podziemski's defense. I like the basketball plays, but you got to score the ball.
Just running around.
You got to score the basketball, man.
Well, you got to be able to at least be a threat to score the basketball. I don't care if you do it a lot or not. That's the issue with the Warriors offense, right? Is they don't have any threats.
No.
I mean, that's why Curry can be double teamed or face guarded or boxed and one.
You see what they were doing with Draymond in Philadelphia? It was just like literally Embiid was like hands extended, like shoot it if you want. We are not defending you out there. I don't care if you made your last one. And there's too many of those guys. I would do the same thing with GP2. I do the same thing with Kevon Looney. I do the same thing with Podziemski.
There's a lot of dareables. I dare you to take that. Like, I think it's interesting that Draymond, he hit 5 games, or not 5 games. He had a game where he hit 5 threes against the Mavericks. They lost by 10. Like, it does not matter how many three-pointers Draymond Green makes. The stat about him making multiple threes, it used to apply. To me, it doesn't anymore because he's not a threat. And he can score. Like I thought he played really well against Philly. Like he had a spike block on Caleb Martin in the third quarter. He looked really good, but he can't do enough offensively to bend the will of a defense.
All right, let's talk about the Golden State Warriors' opponent tonight as they get ready for the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll talk Grizz. We'll talk about the Warriors as they stack up out there in the West. And do you think this team can get to the playoffs, or do you think they're better off missing the playoffs and getting into the lottery like myself? We'll talk about that and much more. It's Evan Giddings. It's Dan DeVone here on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Let's take it home. Warriors tonight back at it, taking on the Memphis Grizzlies, who have just ascended, vaulted to the top of the Western Conference.
Not because of Zach Edey.
Look at the exactly where this team is right now, because I know
they're in second place. They're 23 and 12. Yeah, they're very good.
OKC, a winner again last night.
Yeah, they won their 14th in a row.
I know. 13th. Is it 14?
I thought it was 14. Is it 16? God, well, all I know is they're winning a lot of damn basketball games. You know what, actually, if it is not 14, shame on Spirodides. It is 14. Okay, it is 14. I was about to say the broadcaster was off. But Memphis is, I think the top three in the West.
Huge expectations for Spiro, by the way. He sort of leveled out. Good, but I thought he'd be great.
Well, he used to be the Lakers radio guy, right? I mean, he's pretty damn good.
He is good.
I think he does CBS football.
Yeah. But I thought he was going to be the next.
Like the next Harlan or something?
Yeah. Well, no, come on. Don't do that to me.
Dude, you do realize that Kevin Harlan calls the Super Bowl, which is the biggest event in American sports.
And you should know me by, I'm not influenced by any of that because he's not very good.
No Eagles.
Oh, and you know who we went after? I was telling you we were at Trader Sam's, having thrown a few back, and we were talking about, because these guys are knowledgeable when it comes to sports.
Yeah.
And when it's sports talk radio and play-by-play. So are you familiar with Joe Starkey?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's the legend.
Play-by-play guy for a long time.
Absolute legend in these parts, and just the man. But I always had an issue of listening to Joe because sometimes I had a hard time.
Because you don't know where the ball is?
Thank you very much. And so his iconic call, which everybody is familiar with, is the play and the 5 or 7 laterals and the bands on the field. And these guys are both Cal alum. And I had to break it to him. I'm sorry, I love Joe Starkey as much as the next guy. But from a technical standpoint, that was like the worst call ever. It was so Joe Starkey-esque. It's like, and there's another one. I'm like, another what, Joe? What the hell is happening? As it turns out, they were having these laterals all over the field. But it was so like, please, someone fill in the color this thing for me because I have no idea what's happening.
Which is why that call has evolved into one of the greatest calls in the history of sports. Because with the addition of video,
that's a good point.
The video fills in the blanks that the call does not.
Because now you watch it on YouTube.
And you watch it with the call. So the kind of simulcast is a perfect complement.
But if you're listening to it radio exclusively, as when he was calling it, he was not doing a television broadcast.
And this is where I swear I'm not just backing out because Starkey's a legend, but I do think it's hard to judge, like, did you listen to the call in real time? Because I do think there's something about listening to college football, and obviously, you're hearing it, but when someone loses their ever bleeping mind.
No, I love that.
That's what it was.
That's raw. I love it. But I still would like to know, like, Moen with the lateral, it's still alive, and Garner gets a lot. No, it's another one, and it's still like, I don't know what's going on here. I know something really exciting is happening, but Joe, for crying out loud, will you please give me more of a description?
Well, I think, but that's also representative of the play. It literally is what the bleep is going on here. Like, no one knows what's going on except for the fact that the band's on the football field. So I don't know what I would have done. And that's another part where I have a hard time judging play-by-play broadcasters too. Like, I can judge them based on their body of work, but an individual call as zany as that has lived and stood the test of time, you're right. Technically, it's not perfect, but I don't really know how you nail that call. Like, that is one of the most wild plays in the history of sports. And to me, it's almost impossible to call that play perfect.
Do you know the Holy Roller? Another one.
That right there is why it's iconic.
Beautiful.
The play-by-play itself, you're right, not technically great.
Did you? Okay, what?
But he sticks the landing
no
on the most difficult
back.
call in the history of football. That was sensational.
Did you? Okay, so you know how they got down the field, right?
No. I don't know anything about that game except for the band was on the field. Like, I swear to God.
Okay, so
no one remembers that game.
They lateraled the football. They were having laterals, right?
Oh, well, yeah, like on the play. Yes. Yeah, you're lateraling it. Yes.
Did you hear Joe at any point mention the word lateral?
No.
This is like, still free. There's another one, which I love. I actually listening to it raw. Thank you, Big Chick, because that was beautiful, man. I do take a lot of it back because that takes you back. That's like captures. That brings up such raw emotion, and he did capture the moment. You're right. And at the end there, that was poetic.
The end was because it.
But at some point, can you agree? I don't know what's going on here.
Well, clearly he didn't either, because the man was literally losing his voice in the middle of the call. But that's also part of it too. It's like when there is something to, because I've been in that moment, not at that level, but like when you see something you've never seen before, it is so easy to get lost for words or to try and oversell something, right? It's miraculous. It's unbelievable. It's zany. It's beautiful. It's medlum. It's bedlam. And you don't know what you're saying. Like, I just made up a word medlum in the moment. So when you're trying to figure out how to do that in real time, to me, that is one of the most difficult things in the history of broadcasting. And for him to do that, you get one take, because that call is going to be there forever. Like, his call is going to be associated, because I don't know if it was on television, but his call is going to be next to that play because it is the craziest play in the history of college football. So if he doesn't nail that finish and nail that call, he's going to be remembered as the guy that blew the best play in the history of the sport. There's a lot of pressure in that moment. And so to me, I'm willing to give him the pass that is not describing a lateral at the 50, Rodgers at the 40.
Well, I just need to know. But I guess if you listen to Joe's body of work, there was a lot of that. There was like, Matt Barr back to pass, and I'm like, what happened, Joe?
That's fair.
So it was sort of, but you're right. Listening to that, I stayed corrected.
Starkey to me he's not my favorite play-by-play broadcaster, but the call itself I thought was pretty good. Yeah, for the 415, like Bill King is the gold.
By the way, Bill King was the best. Do we have? If you can find it, we'll give my man Carter here an opportunity. If you have the Holy Roller call. Bill King, the Holy Roller. Insane. Chargers, Raiders, Holy Roller, Bill King.
Yeah, that guy ruined my mom's childhood.
But Casper?
Yeah. The thing is, what was also great about Bill King is, to bring it back to the Warriors.
Oh, we got it loaded when you're ready. Go ahead.
Well, so he obviously did the A's for a long time, has this amazing call we're about to hear, but people always said that the Golden State Warriors, like basketball, was his best sport. That's unbelievable. The fact that you can have that amount of talent.
We talked about this last night as well. Yeah. You should have been at this. You should have been the one night you should have been at Trader Sam's.
Dude, I've been telling you to hit me up. And Trader Sam's is in the old stomping grounds. Just
So that's the fact that he was just a star. Okay, so we just heard Joe Starkey. I lean towards Bill King. So let's see here. The Holy Roller, Chargers, Raiders. Bill King, take it away. Now, I mean, come on.
It's an unbelievable call.
That is just... that is just so... I'm tearing up here. Bill King, there is There was never anybody like you, and there never will ever be somebody that can do what it is that man did in the Bay Area.
I don't even know if you'd be allowed to, like, because one of the. So
here's before we get into it, he stuck the landing as well, and his description of what took place was on par, if not better, than Joe Starkey. But although it was zany and inexplicable, I had a much clearer idea that there was a fumble and the ball's still loose, and it's recovered by the Raiders in the end zone. Yeah. So there was at least the description before he got in what was, one of the craziest plays in the history of the NFL.
Yeah. No, it was, they literally had to make a rule because of it. Like you can't fumble the ball forwards because of that play. No, Bill King's all time. And he's also the only broadcaster, as far as I know, to be ejected from an NBA game.
Is that right?
Yes.
I think I knew this.
Yes, he's been ejected from an NBA game because he mother bleeped the referee, which I... And that's where Bill... Again, I don't know if you wouldn't be allowed to be Bill King because, number one, they don't put radio guys on the floor anymore. Number two, you can't cuss out a ref from the sideline, which, by the way, got on air. And in fact, the producer that was back at the other studio at a different station at the time literally had to cut the tape out of Bill King mother bleeping a referee because the crowd mic, he turned off his headset, but the crowd mic was still on. And there is evidence somewhere out there that was stricken from the tape of Bill King mother bleeping a referee that eventually threw him out of an NBA game.
That's beautiful. Wow.
That was Golden State Warriors basketball.
Continues to grow. Oh. Well, I remember he used to say, because they brought him back for a game once, and I remember they were talking after the game, the play-by-play voice, and I remember him saying, don't you guys ever just sign off? Like, I'd be done. And I would say, doing your post-game show, like, they should toss it to you guys a lot sooner. Like, Bill King didn't do that. Didn't have a 3-segment post-game show. The game would end, he'd talk about it for 30 seconds, and then that was it. But there's a lengthy time in between, and I don't want to get into production here, but anyways.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not really our call.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
You think Bill King would like Vucevic?
Speaking of which, let's get back into it. We don't want to trade Draymond Green, apparently. We're in Canada. Let's join Rosemary. Rosemary or Rosemarie? Which one? Rosemary? How do you pronounce your name?
Rosemary.
Okay, Rosemary, what's on your mind?
Okay, as I was saying earlier, that I'm annoyed at knowing that someone would think that Draymond is the same value as what's his name?
Vucevic?
The guy from Jimmy Butler is the same value as Draymond. He's by far, if you even break down the numbers, break down the quality, break down everything, I don't care what Draymond did and got suspended. That has nothing to do with it. He is a much valuable player. Stephen wouldn't even leave his wingman, not even for a second, so I don't even know where that would fall into the picture. The game is not the same without Draymond in on the Warriors team, so they would not even consider trading him, not even for a second. Doesn't matter who the player is. So I think they should have scrapped that idea from the beginning. He's not going anywhere.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Okay. Thanks.
Can I give you a Canada question before we lose you? We don't get a lot of calls north of the border. Do you frequent Tim Hortons?
Yes.
What's the best donut at Tim Hortons?
Well, guess what? I don't buy donut as much, but I do buy the Dutchie. That's the one I like.
See, we can't get that here in the States. There are no Tim Hortons. But yeah, getting back to your point about, and we appreciate the call, I think I was the one who was out on Draymond Green. And so, Rosemary, I don't know if you're still listening, it just becomes a question of, while he's still good right now, and she's right, he is so smart when it comes to basketball and defense. He's still got it, but
he's fine.
But he's aging. And so do you get off of these guys who are aging sooner rather than later? Because at some point, he's going to hit that wall, and all of a sudden he's going to be this gray beard, and you got him for another year and a half, and you're like, oh, man, how do we get out from underneath this? So at some point, you got to gauge, while I still have value for this guy, do I trade him? And you'd rather trade him sooner rather than later, because later you're not going to get anything for him. You're just going to eat a contract for another old basketball player.
Well, speaking of Dutchies, I mean, it looks like Draymond's beard is glazed over with how much gray it's gone on it lately. But
have you been to Tim Hortons?
Yeah, they have them on the East Coast.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, like up near the border. So like New England, been to a Tim Hortons before. Good stuff. Also Dunkin' Donuts. But no, and they have Tim Hortons. I want to say when I lived in North Dakota, they had Tim Hortons near Fargo and like Grand Forks. Neither here nor there. But trading Draymond, to me, like, I don't think they're going to trade Draymond Green. You can't tell me he's untradeable. And if the reason he's untradeable is because the Warriors would never move him, that to me is I don't see why. Like, it's because his value is nothing. That's why you can't trade, because he's worth more to your team than he is to another team. I think that everybody is on the table except for Steph Curry.
I'd agree with that.
It's more difficult to move Draymond than it is another player. That's why his name is not involved in trade talks. But the fact, he's not untouchable. Draymond Green, nor should he be untouchable, in my opinion. Love Tim Hortons. Love Canada. Thank you for the call. This is from the 510. Bill King would love Vucevic. He'd love to talk Eastern European history and literature with him.
So smart.
I think he was big. Yeah, he was big into, I read he really liked Russian poetry.
What is that?
He was a Renaissance man. Vucevic, to me, is interesting. I think that represents the most realistic deal that the Warriors can make, because this was also reported by Marcus Thompson of The Athletic a little bit ago, that the Thunder and the Kings are interested in Cam Johnson. And what that tells me is the Warriors might be, but it also means less about the Kings than it is about the Thunder. If the Thunder want a player, they're going to get him, because they have more to offer as far as trade pieces and, more importantly, draft picks than anybody else in basketball. And if they want Cameron Johnson, they're going to get Cameron Johnson.
The Warriors have to give up Kuminga to get Johnson.
Yes. I personally would not want to do that.
By the way, there apparently was a Santi Aldama sighting on Union Square by one of the listeners.
Dude, Santi can play. I know
he's a good player.
Well, he's better than Edie, but I think it's...
Well, no, that's not who you mentioned. You went with some Hugo Boss guy.
Yeah, well, Jay Huff's better than him, too.
Jay Huff. I don't even know who that is.
Jay Huff. Hey,
Zach Edey.
You're going to learn about him tonight, brother.
Zach Edey, you have to admit, he's done a lot more. He can... I mean, for a guy that big, remember how he played at Purdue? He never left the paint. I'm sort of surprised.
He's 7'4", 310 pounds. Why would he?
But he's a guy that's extending a lot more than I thought he was capable of. And you know what? He's always had his attitude. Well, my prediction tonight is watch for Edey and, once again, Draymond Green to get into it. And somebody's going to get teed tonight.
I mean, Edey's got a perpetual scowl that I don't think is allowed to leave his face. I don't know if he's...
Speaking of Tim Hortons in Canada.
What?
That's where he's from.
Edey?
Yeah, the Big Maple.
I don't know enough about this guy. I just don't like him.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I guess I thought he was from Florida because he went to IMG Academy. But actually, that's why Draymond picks on him.
What?
He doesn't go after Americans.
Oh. You buy into that?
Why do you think he went after Buddy Hield?
Chavano, how many times he doesn't get the he doesn't get the Buddy moniker until he starts hitting more than 1 3 in a month.
Yeah, I mean he'd never go after Jaren Jackson Jr. That's a Michigan State guy.
By the way, do you know Buddy Hield's? Well, you know his first name Chavano. You know what his middle name is? It's Rainier. Which, God, that is like why would his mom?
It's a fantastic beer.
Like, those are like the best, because it wasn't a national brand, but it was a regional brand in the Northwest, in the Seattle area. And they did the most clever commercials for Rainier beer. It was like the best. Typically, if you see something that's locally produced, it's kind of like, silly. Theirs, and people would wait for these commercials to drop because they were as popular as the beer itself. Rainier beer. I want to say sort of in the Seattle area, but it's definitely
it's named
Pacific
after
Northwest.
Mount Rainier, right?
Mount Rainier, yeah. I have a buddy that climbs Mount Rainier regularly on the rig.
Well, the slopes are open. 'Tis the season. It's also the name of a AAA team for the Seattle Mariners, the Tacoma Rainiers.
Tacoma Rainiers.
Yeah, my buddy used to live not too far away from there. It's a nice stadium. I miss the Pacific Northwest. I know you do too.
Well, you've intimated on more than one occasion that you'd be a guy that if somebody out there in Portland, I think you said, I could see you rolling around Portland. Like I could see you throwing down roots in the Pacific Northwest and being one of those guys.
I'd be Kevin Calabro in a second.
Kevin Calabro. That's
he used to do the Supersonics too, right? I think he's one of the more underrated play-by-play broadcasters.
Very, very good.
Kevin Calabro is awesome.
Yes, to golf with him.
Damian Lillard. It's like a very, very high-pitched voice. He's good.
He's the complete opposite. He has like the pipes, man.
Oh, but no. Okay, find a call where he gets excited. I'll play it for you after the show because we don't want to waste people's time, and we got like 5 minutes left.
All right.
What do you want the Warriors to do right now, Dan? I think like tonight, this weekend, they're going to keep it rolling. If they could beat Memphis without Curry, that'd be massive. But I think we're at the point also where you got to try and just build in rest for these dudes to make sure that you can get the games that are gettable, aka the one tomorrow versus Sac. Also, the Cam Johnson news tells me that the Warriors are not going to get him, and not just because of Kuminga. I also think that like if the Thunder, you're not outbidding them. Like the Nets would take a package from the Thunder as opposed to the Warriors, even if it included Kuminga.
They just have too many. I mean, Presti has done such a good job there. They're so good, and yet they can get even better because of all those draft picks.
And they don't even have Chet Holmgren.
Oh, I know.
He's been hurt for most of the year.
So I think the Warriors, this is a big game tonight.
It is.
It's big because again, what it is that we saw on Thursday is that sort of a carryover and sort of something they can build off of, or was that a one-off? And when I mean that game, I mean the energy, and I mean the ball. It was clearly different. If you watch that game, you're like, wow, where'd this come from?
So they're making shots.
But I think it all stemmed. You could see that there was the ball movement and just they were pushing pace right from the outset, that they were a step and a step half faster than out of Philadelphia. So will that continue? I mean, are we going to see that? Or are they going to revert back to that team that, was so bad over the last month and a half?
I mean, they're probably closer to that team than they are scoring 140 a game. Like, that was the only time the third time this year they've scored more than 130 points. And one of them, speaking of Portland, was against the Trailblazers on opening night. So, it's a one-off, but it doesn't mean that they can't get hot. And I think that's what this roster is built around, is a lot of streaky players. And that means that Chavano could break out tonight. He could get you 20, and that could help you beat the Memphis Grizzlies. Without Curry, I also don't think it's out of the question that Draymond Green sits tonight because he generally doesn't play when Steph doesn't. He's also older. But I think the Warriors, they have to shoot the crap out of the ball to beat Memphis, who's probably not going to have Ja. And it's because they play so fast. I think they're a tougher matchup for the Warriors. One of the things, you're right, the ball was moving. It was crisp. It was clean against the Sixers, but the Sixers also are not very good defensively, and they're not a buttoned-up team, and that's not been the case with Memphis. They're obviously a lot better with Ja, but defensively, they are much more they're built to defend the three-point line a lot better than Philly.
Yeah, and again, without Steph Curry, I can tell you right now that Jonathan Kuminga is going to go for, if not high 20s, he's going to be in the 30s.
Oh, Draymond is going to play tonight.
Yeah, and again, I think these are the games where Jonathan Kuminga, if he does not, and it's always, just to sort of make it even better for Jonathan Kuminga if Draymond's not there, but he will be the centerpiece tonight. And just watch his body language. He is so much more of a confident basketball player when Steph's not there. And he is going to be, the offense will run through Jonathan Kuminga, and that I can guarantee that it's going to be Jonathan Kuminga's world tonight. And Jonathan Kuminga will continue this hot streak and look for him to set a new career high in points because he's in a groove and and they need him to do that. So it's not just about him being comfortable because Steph's not there, but he understands the necessity now for him to score the basketball. That and the fact that, he's doing it at a high clip right now is a perfect remedy for this guy to go off this evening. I think he's perfectly positioned to have a huge night.
I agree. Yeah, and it is because they need him to. There's not really another option without Curry on the floor for this team. Offense by committee. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to score 35. But if he does, who he will go at, and who Jonathan Kuminga has shown that he can really take advantage of.
Desmond Bane.
No, centers that can't move their feet, and Zach Edey is public enemy number 1 tonight because
Jaren Jackson will be out there.
Yeah, but hopefully you can get him more towards the perimeter. But Edey or Huff are going to get eaten by Kuminga. He did it against Zubats. He's done it against who's the other big center? Point is, if you can't move your feet,
he loves when Plumlee comes onto the floor.
Mason Plumlee, that's another one. Yeah, Plumlee's better than Edey, so it's.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You really like your centers that can't shoot.
I like traditional old throwbacks. We got to say goodbye.
Do we?
All right, until now. Actually, I'm in New York next week. So you
what
and whomever, because you can't fill these shoes. Because if you come out to the Kahuna, you better not miss, people. I don't know what the hell that has to do with anything, but it's a good way to get out. From my man Evan Giddings, Carter Chickering, Pasta. We love you. We'll see you next time right here on 95.7 The Game.